Chapter 417. What do we do now that they've gone back? Sword Emperors, Shifu asked. Sword Emperor, Shifu, and Zhu Wuxian were official members of Guild Wind and Cloud. Sword Emperor panicked when he received the notification that the battle had begun. Shifu and Sword Emperor's mission was to keep Xuanzhen's forces in Thorn City, preventing them from returning to defend the encampment. Now that Xuanzhen's forces had entered the battlefield, and the last member had run away, this was a dereliction of duty. They might be scolded when they returned, but their salaries might be docked. Shifu thought for a moment and said, "Let's go back and help." There were quite a number of Guild Wind and Cloud members in Thorn City, and they would be a great help if they returned to attack the encampment. Since Xuanzhen's forces had run away, there was no point in staying here. It was better to wait for the higher-ups to blame them. All right, Sword Emperor agreed with Shifu's words and immediately ordered his guild members to return and help. Wow, 126 points, what a haul. Damn, we've been fighting for so long, but we can't even get a single skill from you. Famous Sword Path Snow and Biming Yoyu said sourly. No matter how good an assassin was, he could only fight one person at a time. Mages were still the best. They could kill a whole group with a single skill. They were the most efficient at farming monsters and points. What's that? Just as Mingdu was bragging about how many points he had earned, Yang Na suddenly pointed at the opposite side of the arrow tower. Everyone looked in the direction that Yang Na was pointing and saw a huge triangular wooden frame in the camp of Wind and Cloud Guild. Behind the frame was a ladle-like object. For players from Wind and Cloud Guild were surrounding the frame and moving a huge rock into the ladle. Wuji's expression darkened when he saw this. It's a catapult. Catapults were the best siege weapons in the cold weapon era. How could Wuji not recognize them? There's such a thing in a catapult game? The others were shocked when they heard this. Although cold weapons had faded from people's sight, they had heard about them on television and in books. However, this was the first time they had seen a real catapult. Yes, Wuji said, this thing is classified as a weapon. Advanced weaponsmiths can create it as long as they have the blueprint. The background of his rebirth was an era of cold weapons. Catapults were similar to crossbows, so it wasn't strange for them to exist. What was strange was that Wind and Cloud Guild was able to find such a thing. Thinking about it, it made sense. Wind and Cloud Guild was backed by Xiaobing's workshop. Workshops had always been the source of all sorts of rare equipment and skills in the game. Only such a large workshop could create something like this. While everyone was talking, the catapult had already been loaded. At the command of the Laihuo warlord, the catapult was launched, and a huge rock fell from the sky. Yin Lao Air couldn't dodge in time, so he could only raise his shield to block the attack. However, in the face of such an attack, Yin Lao Air was overestimating himself. With a loud boom, the cannonball fell. Bao San, Yin Lao Air, and Chun Xiang's 6 demons were smashed into white light. They were teleported to the revival point to wait for revival. Only Mingjian Daoxue and Biming Yoyu, who were hiding behind the mountain wall, managed to escape. However, the two of them were quite frightened by the formidable fellow. What made Yin Lao Air want to cry was that the cannonball had emptied his shield and turned it into a useless item. Chun Xiang, who was standing on the wall, felt his heart ache so much that his mouth twitched. These 6 demons were leveled up to level 25 by Chun Xiang. It should be known that leveling up required a share of the master's experience. Otherwise, with Chun Xiang's leveling efficiency, he would have reached the top of the leaderboards long ago. Chun Xiang had put in a lot of effort to train these 6 demons from level 1 to level 25. However, they were wiped out in an instant. If this was in real life, the catapult's cannonball would have definitely blocked the entrance. However, the huge rock was a consumable, and like the arrow, it disappeared as soon as it hit the ground. After Yin Lao Air and the demons were killed, the frontline players from Wind and Cloud Guild charged forward. Just like before, the gorge only allowed 4 people to pass through. However, without the frontline blocking the way, just Spring Source 2 crowd control players and Bright City's Yang Na's damage output wouldn't be able to stop the wave upon wave of players. Not long after, a gap appeared in the 3-man blockade. Mingjian Daoshua, Youyu Baiming, and a place one's pride fought back bitterly. However, there were too many tanks at the front line, and their classes countered them. No matter how skilled or well-equipped they could not last more than a few rounds before they were smashed in a white light. Seeing that the players from Wind and Cloud Guild were about to reach the entrance, Yin Lao Air rushed out of the entrance with a sword and shield in one hand and Bao San's whirlwind in the other. Chun Xiang summoned the demons again to form a formation with the two of them. He wanted to forcefully seal the entrance, but the second cannonball landed. Bang! White light flashed, and the area behind the entrance was cleared again. Not only Yin Lao Air and Bao San, even the players from Wind and Cloud Guild were crushed to death. Such a ferocious scene stunned both sides. F***CK, this thing attacks indiscriminately. Lihua Warlord said with his mouth agape. This was the first time Wind and Cloud Guild had used a catapult since it was created. Wind and Cloud Guild gave an order, don't just stand there, their line of defense has been breached. Charge! Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Lihua Warlord added, and received a bunch of eye rolls. The players from Wind and Cloud Guild received the order and charged forward again. From this, one could see the benefits of having more people. Although the entrance could only allow 4 people to pass through, Wind and Cloud Guild had enough players. It was not a big loss to lose 4 people at once. Xuanzhen only had 12 people. No matter how strong they could not afford to lose so many people. Even if only 5 people died, they would lose more than half of their strength. With this, they would not have enough backup. Wuji sighed. F***CK, it's only been 4 minutes. I didn't think they would be breached so easily. 12 people fighting close to 500 people. Even if no one died, their supplies would not be able to keep up. Wuji did not expect to last 60 minutes. Of course, if the other side did not have a catapult, they could hold on until Blood Alliance came to support them. However, the appearance of the catapult completely turned the situation around. The others were also disheartened. The terrain advantage of the gate of the encampment was the biggest advantage of the Quan Zhun sect's encampment. Once it was breached, it would mean defeat. Without any obstacles, how could a dozen people fight against 100 people? Go back and protect. Just as Wuji was about to give the order to abandon the entrance and protect the crystal, a system notification raised Wuji's confidence. Chapter 418. Reeks, old cow is here. Not only Wuji, but the others were also shocked when they saw the system notification. These fellows from the Quan Zhun sect had always been arrogant and looked down on everyone. If it was in the past, with their arrogance, they would definitely feel ashamed of themselves for having such thoughts. However, Wang Yud used his strength to conquer everything. As time went by, the arrogant members of Xuanzhen treated him as their last line of defense. Just like the Catapult and Wind and Cloud Guild, Wang Yu was Xuanzhen's trump card. What's going on? Didn't you say you could hold out for 10 minutes? How come you've been beaten up so badly while I was logging off to go to the toilet? Wang Yu asked curiously when she saw the players from Wind and Cloud swarming toward the entrance of the residence. Look at that. Wuji pointed at the catapult in Wind and Cloud Guild's camp. What's that? Wang Yu was confused. Wuji said, catapult. It's used to attack cities. Our camp can't hold on for long. We can't stop it with our manpower. Wang Yu said, then we can just dismantle it. Dismantle this? Everyone was stunned. What a bold tone. It's as if it's his own home, and he can dismantle it whenever he wants. Let's not talk about whether the catapult can be dismantled. There are so many Wind and Cloud Guild players there, and they can't just watch you dismantle it. Furthermore, the entrance to the camp is blocked. Even if you can step on someone's head and fly out, they will shoot you to the wall with a volley of arrows. How will we know if we don't try? Wang Yu is excited. Stop fooling around. The entrance is blocked, and we can't get out. Wuji said, just go through from the back. Behind, Mingdu asked, isn't that a cliff? Setting Sun Valley went from low to high, and Xuanzhen's camp was blocked by Wuji at the deepest part of the valley. Other than the entrance, the rest of the camp was a 70-80 m cliff. This was the barrier that Xuanzhen was proud of. You won. Wang Yu chuckled. To you, it's called a cliff. Don't tell me you want to climb up. Everyone instantly understood what Wang Yu was thinking. This guy's thinking was really bold. The cliff was as high as a 20-story building. Most people wouldn't dare to climb it. Listening to Wang Yu's tone, it was as if it was as simple as going to bed and sleeping. Of course, everyone in Xuanzhen had seen Wang Yu's ability to climb walls, so they didn't doubt it at all. Wu Ji said, "How long will it take to go from the back of the encampment to the other side?" Wang Yu thought about it and said, 2 or 3 minutes. So long? Wu Ji's hopeful face was now full of disappointment. Yin Lao Er, Bao San, and Ming Jian Daoxue had died twice already. Every time they died, their resurrection time will be extended by 10 seconds. Now that Wind and Cloud Guild was at the gates, Chun Xiang, Ming Du, and Yang Na could only hold them off for a minute at most, even if they risked their lives. Wang Yu said, "It can't be helped. I have to climb up this high, and my movement speed isn't very fast." Wu Ji sighed. "Then hurry up. We'll try to hold them off for 2 minutes. You don't have to dismantle it. You just have to stop the catapults from firing." As long as the catapults couldn't be used, the front line of defense would be able to hold them off for a few more minutes. "All right." Wang Yu nodded and jumped onto the wall of the encampment. Then, she grabbed onto a rock and started climbing up. The players from Wind and Cloud Guild were less than 3 meters away from the encampment's entrance. They were only able to hold them off because of the 3 players at the entrance. The catapults took a long time to reload, and the damage they dealt was indiscriminate. It wasn't a good idea to kill 1,000 enemies at the cost of one's own life. As such, the Inferno Warlord only dared to fire a catapult when Bao San and Yin Lao Er came out to obstruct his charge. The 3 players on the watchtower were safe for now. However, it was only a matter of time before Xuanzhen's blockade was broken through. 2 meters. Yu 2. While Ming Du and Chun Xiang's spells were on cooldown, the players from Wind and Cloud Guild advanced another meter. The enemy was getting closer and closer. Spring Fragrance hurriedly said, "Ming Du, prepare to fire." As he spoke, Spring Fragrance aimed his staff at Ming Du. A faintly discernible band of energy appeared between the two of them, and Ming Du's HP began to rise rapidly. "Got it." Ming Du waved his staff. Thunder fire condensed, and a sky full of fire arrows landed in front of the encampment's entrance. With Chun Xiang's help, Ming Du's fire arrows rained down for more than 20 seconds. When the fire arrows landed on the ground, lightning crackled, and a large number of players from Wind and Cloud Guild were instantly killed. However, the shield warriors at the front line knew that Ming Du's magic damage was extremely high. When Ming Du cast his spells, they raised their shields and blocked the damage in time. Even so, when Ming Du's mana bar was emptied, the shield warriors' HP dropped by 2/3. Some of their shields were almost depleted. This made all the players from Wind and Cloud Guild remember Ming Du as a terrifying mage. This was what it meant to be a canon mage. After being bombarded by Ming Du, the damage of other mages was a joke. At this moment, there were still a dozen shield warriors at the entrance of Xuanzhen's encampment. Chun Xiang and Ming Du were completely useless now that they had no mana. Yang Na fired her crossbow and blocked the way. However, archers were not AoE cannons like mages. Apart from multi-arrow, they could only attack one person at a time. The shield warriors quickly got back into formation. The other players from Wind and Cloud Guild swarmed in from the canyon behind them. F***CK. Why are there so many people? How much longer until second bow revives? 20 seconds. Where did old cow go? I just climbed up the cliff. Why are you rushing me? F***CK. Ming Du and Chun Xiang were in complete despair. Yu 3. Humph. Yang Na gritted her teeth and jumped down from the watchtower. When the shield bearers of Wind and Cloud saw the archer of the Quanzhun sect jump down, they were all stunned. Archers always try to stay as far away from their targets as possible. Was this woman here to die? At this thought, the shield warriors from Wind and Cloud Guild rammed into Yang Na. Yang Na dodged and turned to the side of a shield warrior. She grabbed the shield warrior's shoulder with her left hand and pointed the crossbow at his face with her right. She pulled the trigger, and a white flash appeared. Close combat was Yang Na's standard fighting style. What the F asterisk CK? The other shield warriors were shocked when they saw Yang Na killing people at such a close distance. They surrounded her again. Yang Na pushed her footwork to the limit. Every time she turned around, she would nimbly dodge an attack and pull the trigger at the same time, killing a shield warrior with low health. In an instant, the shield warriors in the front row of Wind and Cloud Guild were all killed by Yang Na. Yang Na was also engulfed by a sky full of arrows and spells. Xuanjin's last line of defense was basically destroyed. The players from Wind and Cloud Guild were very close. At this moment, Ma Li and the other two who had been missing climbed up the watchtower. "Why are you here?" Mingdu asked curiously. "To help," Ma Li said. Mingdu smiled bitterly. "Let's go back. You're only going to die." Ma Li, the highest level of the three girls, was only level 17. The lowest level players were level 25. Mingdu was already being polite when he said that the girls were going to die. "Don't underestimate us." Chapter 419. Genius 1 Second Remember Net, providing you with exciting novels to read. What is this? Seeing the red, blue, and black bottles on the ground, Mingdu asked in surprise. Marie said, "Potion." As she spoke, Marie displayed the properties of the potion. Fire elixir effect. When consumed, dispels the freezing effect. When thrown, deals small area fire damage. Fire damage is limited to 1 HP per second. Lasts for 5 seconds. Ice potion effect. If consumed, dispels burn status. When thrown, it will cause frost nova skill effect, dealing 150 frost fixed damage in an area and reducing movement speed by 50 for 20 seconds. Rampage elixir effect. Will cause berserk effect if consumed or thrown. Attack increased by 80. Defense reduced to 0. Comes with the above confusion. Randomly attacks a target within the field of vision, regardless of friend or foe. Lasts for 30 seconds. F asterisk CK. Isn't this the item bottle of the stealer? The thief was the advanced class of the thief class. While the strength of the stealth skill was greatly increased, the thief was adept at using all kinds of item bottles and poison skills to attack the opponent. It was similar to the lurker class of the archer class, and was nicknamed the Wretched Duo by the players who had reincarnated. The item bottle of the thief was a very unique item for the class. It could be used to attack and control, which was quite interesting. Because of the variety of changes in battle, it was also known as the juggling thief. However, while the sideshow thief was easy to pick up, it was also very difficult to master. This was because the most unique item, the bottle skill, was on the level 40 skill tree for sideshow thieves. Not only that, but this skill also required players to complete quests to obtain the skill blueprint. As a result, very few sideshow thieves could persist until the end. He was surprised that the girls knew this skill. Xiao, he nodded her head and said, "And when I changed my job at level 10, I accepted a hidden mission and obtained this skill. Previously, I didn't have the materials to make it. Later on, Big Sister had enough materials to make medicine, so I used her materials to make some and stored it in the warehouse. Have you all seen it?" "Nope." Chun Xiang and Mingdu both shook their heads. The number of times these two could return to the guild encampment was limited, let alone visit the warehouse. Molly said happily, "Luckily, Big Sis said that this item is a tool that can be bought with the market, so we didn't sell it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen it today." While they were talking, the players of Wind and Cloud arrived at the entrance of the encampment again. Molly said, "They're charging over again. Everyone, take a few more bottles and smash them." "Okay," the girls answered. They picked up the bottles on the ground and threw them down without thinking. The girls weren't strong to begin with, and their skills at throwing bottles were very rudimentary. Mingdu and Chun Xiang clicked their tongues at the sight of their clumsy and messy throwing bottles. If it weren't for the fact that the entrance to the encampment wasn't big and the players from Wind and Cloud had no space to dodge, it would be a wonder if they could hit anything with their throwing skills. "Sister, it hurts you to throw it away like this," Mingdu said with a pained expression. "You have to throw them at the squishy targets. Frost bottle at the entrance of the encampment, chaos bottle at the head of a warrior. Also, don't throw them to the side. What a waste. While chatting, Mingdu and Chun Xiang taught the girls how to throw the bottles. It was a beautiful scene. Wuji and a place once pride cursed with bloodshot eyes. Damn, two beasts. The power of the item bottles wasn't to be underestimated in such a small space. Under the guidance of Chun Xiang and Mingdu, the power of the item bottles was maximized. The frost bottle sealed off the encampment entrance and dealt the most damage to the enemy. The Berserk bottle's chaos effect was especially effective. Although the warriors affected by the chaos could only use normal attacks, the 80 attack increase was still a huge problem for the enemy's formation. The encampment entrance was sealed off again. Seeing this, the Flame Warlord was furious. Catapults smashed the watchtower. The reason the Warlord of Fire hadn't attacked the arrow towers at the start was because they were guild buildings. They had relatively high durability. The arrow towers could withstand at least 3 attacks from the catapults. As a result, the Flame Warlord didn't want to waste the cannonballs on the watchtower unless absolutely necessary. Who knew that the people in the watchtower would be so shameless, completely infuriating the Flame Warlord? The player controlling the catapult received the command and hurriedly lifted the boulders from the ground to the catapult. At this moment, a figure jumped down from the valley not far away. Just as the figure was about to land, it suddenly flashed and flew onto the catapults. The person who came was Wang Yu. Wang Yu's descent from the sky gave the people around the catapults a fright. The Flame Warlord said angrily, "What the hell are you doing? Which department is this month's bonus or not? Go play somewhere else." The Wind and Cloud Guild players would never have guessed that Wang Yu, who was supposed to be stuck in the encampment, would suddenly appear here. As a result, the Flame Warlord treated Wang Yu as one of his own. Hearing the Flame Warlord's words, Wang Yu was slightly taken aback. He smiled and said, "You idiot." As he spoke, Wang Yu unsheathed the Heaven and Earth blade and slashed at the rope on the side of the catapult. Whoosh! One rope was cut. System notification, 10 catapults destroyed. F***CK. What the F***CK are you doing? What's your name? The Flame Warlord was furious when he saw Wang Yu slash at the catapult. He unsheathed his two-handed sword and walked over to Wang Yu. He had probably forgotten that Wang Yu had called him an idiot. Wind and Rain suddenly raised his head and looked at Wang Yu's chest. His expression changed, and he pulled the Flame Warlord back. "Careful, he's from Chuanjin." "Chuanjin?" The Flame Warlord looked at Wang Yu in surprise. "That's right, I'm Iron Ox," Wang Yu said as he slashed at the catapult again. 20 catapults destroyed. How did you get here?" The Flame Warlord asked in horror. The entrance to the gorge was full of people. Even an assassin with stealth couldn't run here, let alone a half-useless professional grandmaster of combat like the Flame Warlord. He didn't dare imagine that Wang Yu had climbed over the cliff. "I ran here," Wang Yu muttered. He kicked the catapult and broke it. 35 catapults destroyed. F***CKU. Hurry up and kill him. Seeing that the catapult had been destroyed in just a few words, the Flame Warlord couldn't care less about his curiosity. He roared and commanded the people nearby to attack Wang Yu. The players carrying the stones were all warriors with extraordinary strength. After hearing the command, they unsheathed their swords and slashed at Wang Yu. Wind and Rain condensed an ice spear and threw it at him. Wang Yu saw the opponent's attack and chuckled. He leaped up unhurriedly and grabbed the topmost beam of the catapult. With a pull of his arms, he flipped his body and sat on the beam. The warriors in Wind and Rain's attacks missed and landed on the catapult. System notification, 75 catapult damaged. Unusable. Seeing this, the Flame Warlord almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "Do you dare come down and fight me?" The Flame Warlord shouted angrily, pointing at Wang Yu. This catapult was not easy to make. Even with Wind and Rain's financial resources, they could only make one. Wang Yu destroyed it in minutes. How could the Flame Warlord not be angry? "Not bad. You're very brave." Wang Yu chuckled. He slashed at the topmost beam of the catapult and jumped down lightly. Chapter 420. Kill him. The Raging Inferno Warlord wasn't the kind of idiot who would take the initiative to fight in a one-on-one situation. When he saw Wang Yu jump down from the catapult, he commanded the surrounding players to surround and attack Wang Yu. The instant Wang Yu landed, he sensed the murderous intent of the surrounding players. Just as he was about to dodge, his legs suddenly gave way and he sank. Huh, a hybrid spell. Wang Yu was shocked. He couldn't help but glance at Sudden Anomaly, who was holding his staff. This guy, who didn't stand out, was actually a hybrid mage like Mingdu. Unlike Mingdu's Thunderfire hybrid spell, Sudden Anomaly's spell was a hybrid of ice and earth. When the two elements were combined, the power of the spell would skyrocket. When ice and earth were combined, it could create a unique attribute, Swamp. Although Swamp's damage wasn't as strong as Thunderfire, its control and defense were far superior to other classes. It was even comparable to Warlocks. For example, Sudden Anomaly's Flowing Swamp River caused a 40% ice movement speed reduction effect, and stacked with a 40% swamp movement speed reduction effect. It was enough to turn a full agility archer into a snail. Not bad. You even know hybrid spells. Sudden Anomaly was a little surprised. Although hybrid mages weren't the only hidden classes, they were still very rare. Ordinary players had to be knowledgeable to recognize them. Knowledge doesn't necessarily mean strength. Kill him for me. Sudden Anomaly once again gave the order to kill everyone around him. Before Sudden Anomaly finished speaking, the Fire Warlord and 4 warriors, who were closest to Wang Yu and had been the first to attack Wang Yu, were about to land their attacks on Wang Yu. Wang Yu was deep in the swamp and couldn't dodge in time. He switched his weapon to a one-handed sword and flicked his wrist. The long sword produced a series of sword sparks. The Fire Warlord and the others cried out in pain. 3 of them were instantly turned into white light by Wang Yu. The attacks of the other 2 were also forcefully stopped. They screamed and squatted on the ground. F***CK. The winds and clouds suddenly changed. They were so shocked by Wang Yu's sword that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. Just now, Wang Yu's attack had been extremely fast. From a side, it looked like a single slash. The sudden change in the wind and clouds made it so that the sword couldn't be seen clearly. However, the 5 people surrounding Wang Yu all had 2 damage numbers appear above their heads. In other words, Wang Yu had stabbed 10 times in an instant. That was a terrifying number. In particular, the power of these 10 swords made Feng Yun's heart skip a beat. The Fire Warlord was stabbed twice in the face. Another person was stabbed in the glabella and the nose by Wang Yu. The 2 of them were warriors, so they weren't stabbed in the vitals. They were only cut to critical health. As for the other 3, they were all stabbed in the eyes by Wang Yu and instantly killed. Sudden Anomaly was not stupid. Naturally, he could see that Wang Yu's 10 swords were all aimed at the opponent's eyes. There was no sense of pain and rebirth, nor was there any bloody scenes. However, the simulation of having one's eyes pierced was definitely enough to leave an indelible shadow in one's mind. In just 1 second, 3 people died and 2 were injured. The cruelty of his methods and the viciousness of his attacks were shocking. Was this scary guy really just a grandmaster of combat? In contrast to Sudden Anomaly's fear, Wang Yu was rather dissatisfied with his own sword. This sword technique was called Dazzling Dazzle. It was based on swinging the sword and using the shaking of the wrist to create the illusion of 10 swords in a second. It was a very skillful sword technique. If it was in real life, Wang Yu was confident that all 10 swords would hit the opponent's eyes. However, in the game, 4 of his swords missed. It seemed that the agility attribute in the game had some effect on the speed of attacks. As Wang Yu shook his head and sighed, the arrows and spells from the surrounding guild wind and cloud were already flying in front of him. Seeing that Wang Yu was about to be engulfed by the countless arrows and spells, Wang Yu smiled. His body suddenly sank into the swamp beneath his feet, easily dodging the wave of attacks. This Sudden Anomaly was dumbfounded when he saw Wang Yu disappear. The next moment, Wang Yu appeared in front of Sudden Anomaly and grabbed him by the neck. At this time, the Inferno Warlord had already recovered. He and the other surviving warrior buried their heads and rammed into Wang Yu. Wang Yu threw sudden anomaly with all his might, causing the two warriors to pause for a moment. At the same time, he switched the one-handed sword in his hand to the universe blade in its scabbard. When the two warriors were not too far away from him, Wang Yu lowered his center of gravity and abruptly unsheathed his saber. A circle of saber light rippled around Wang Yu's body, and flowers of white light lit up around Wang Yu. Not only were the two warriors in sudden anomaly instantly killed, but the stealth thieves were also cut down on the spot. Wind and Cloud had a lot of players, so after creating an opening, Wang Yu didn't dare to stop. Wang Yu rolled a few meters away, then dashed out of the range of the archers. He ran to the bottom of the cliff, grabbed it, and climbed up under the dumbfounded gazes of countless people. Wang Yu's harassment not only destroyed Wind and Cloud's catapults, but also pinned down a portion of their backline players. This greatly reduced the pressure on Xuanzhen's encampment. At the same time, over at Xuanzhen's encampment, Bao San and Yin Lao Air had also revived. They formed a defensive line with Chun Xiang's demons again. With the help of the girls' item bottles and Ming Du and Yang Na's firepower, they regained control of the stronghold. 2 more minutes. Wu Ji looked at the time and let out a long sigh. If there are no accidents, we should be able to wait until blood-red war flags reinforcements arrive. Really? I hope they don't pull out another catapult. We've already used up all our item bottles. We don't have the strength to launch another wave. Everyone looked at Wu Ji in disdain. Wu Ji said that they could hold on for 10 minutes, but they didn't last long before Wind and Cloud took out a buggy item like a catapult and almost wiped out Xuanzhen. Everyone was still afraid. On the other side of the battlefield, Wang Yu said in disdain, "What are you afraid of? I'll dismantle it again if there's another one." Everyone, damn, so the enemy has a buggy trump card. Our side isn't too bad either. Without the harassment from the catapult, the battle went much smoother. Chun Xiang's newly summoned demons weren't as strong as the level 25 great demons, but with Wu Ji's miraculous healing and the 2 assassin support, Yin Lao Air and Bao San's defensive line was quite solid. Time passed second by second. 2 minutes passed very quickly. The 2 warriors held out against 10,000 enemies by themselves and finally made it to the end. Chapter 4:21. The guild encampment battle was a huge event between players. No matter which guild it was, the system would announce it to the entire server. If it was in the later stages of the game, the guild encampment battles would be as frequent as eating and drinking. Players wouldn't care about something that had nothing to do with them. However, it was the early stages of the game, and the guilds were still developing. Wind and Cloud guild's sudden attack on Xuanzhen pushed Xuanzhen to the forefront once again. It was not because of anything else, but because there had only been 2 encampment battles since the start of the game, and both times, the name of this unlucky guild had been on the list. The first time was when Xuanzhen attacked Gokuraku, Gokuraku. Not many people knew what the outcome was. It was said that the battle ended in a boring manner. This time, it was another guild that attacked Xuanzhen. Although most players didn't know what Wind and Cloud Guild was, a guild that attacked another guild's encampment in the early stages of the game couldn't be weak. D*MN, it's Xuanzhen again. These guys are always trying to hype themselves up. Xuanzhen? It's only been a month since the game started, and they dare to encampment battles. Who are they? A newbie asked curiously when he heard people talking about this name. What is this? These guys started an encampment battle not long ago. Their opponent was the super guild Gokuraku, Gokuraku. D*MN, are you serious? Could it be that they're also a superpower? Bullsh**, they're just a bunch of idiots. I think they're going crazy from wanting to be famous. The newbie was speechless. A guild with just a few people had participated in 2 encampment battles in history, and one of them was initiated by them. These guys were really crazy. Indeed, the waters in the gaming circle were deep. Even if they weren't top players in professional teams, as long as they were famous players, they would earn a lot of money. However, there were too many of them, and it was extremely difficult to make a name for themselves. Therefore, It wasn't uncommon for some unknown players or streamers to create scandals to attract attention in order to become famous. Now that Rebirth was an MMORPG that transcended time and time again, with just a few people daring to provoke the big guilds, it was inevitable that people would think that they were a bunch of shameless dogs trying to stir up trouble. Of course, these are the thoughts of the normal players. The big guilds that had contact with Xuanjin or knew about Wind and Cloud Guild were especially interested in this encampment battle. Wind and Cloud Guild? Aren't they from Xiaobing's workshop? What virtue does this Xuanjin sect have to make those guys cause such a big commotion? Sincerity, the person in charge of Huaxiao region's famous South China Business Alliance, asked the person beside him strangely. Xiaobing's workshop walked the extreme path and had always kept a low profile. This time, they had taken the initiative to attack a small guild's encampment. This was definitely an extremely unusual matter. I heard that the high-level potions on the market are made by people from the Xuanjin sect. I guess Xiaobing's studio wants to monopolize the market, but those guys are unwilling to compromise, so they decided to use force. The person named Credibility first, next to Sincerity, deduced. Oh, no wonder. Li Xiaobing found me 2 days ago and said that she needed to do something. A business with them. With them. Is that so? Did you agree? No. I said to think about it. After all, if they could force Xiaobing's studio to take the initiative to cooperate with them, they must not be easy to deal with. Don't get yourself into trouble instead of getting any benefits. Looking at what happened today, I think I guessed right. Yeah, Qiyun City, Quan Tianxiao's office. Quan Tianxiao was stunned when he saw the system notification. He asked Dragon Rider, "Who are they?" "Fighters from Xiaobing's workshop," Dragon Rider replied. As a first-tier guild, this information was no secret to Dragon Rider. Are they strong? They're pretty strong. They're just slightly weaker than our elite squad. Those fellows from the Quanjin sect are in for it this time, Quan Yutian said with a smile. Ugh, will they lose? Dragon Rider's expression changed when he talked about Xuanjin. Quan Tianxiao rolled his eyes at Dragon Rider. Humph, do you think they'll get help from monsters in an encampment battle? Ugh. Dragon Rider's face turned red as he nodded. That's right. They definitely won't be able to fight them head-on. At this time, in Sunset Valley and Xuanjin encampment, the reinforcements were instantly teleported into the battlefield as the countdown ended. Wind and Cloud Guild wasn't small. They had close to 2,000 people. In the blink of an eye, Sunset Valley was filled with players from Wind and Cloud Guild. The Blood Alliance was a famous big guild. Other than the main guild, there were 8 subordinate guilds, and they had a total of 5,000 people. However, the Quanjin sect base was a low-level base, and it could only accommodate 500 people. Therefore, only the Blood Red War flag could bring a portion of the Blood Alliance's people in. *CK, you guys really held on? The first thing Blood Red War flag said when they entered the map was this incongruous sentence. It couldn't be helped. After all, the difference in numbers was too great. No matter how strong an individual was, with such a huge difference in numbers, Blood Red War flag didn't think that Xuanjin's freaks could hold on. Blood Red War flag probably knew better than most people what it meant to have 15 people fend off 500 people's attacks for 10 minutes. It was no wonder that they were so excited to say such a thing. Wuji also knew that Blood Red War flag liked to speak without thinking. So he laughed. Are you surprised? With our skills, we can hold on for another 10 minutes. Cough, cough. The Xuanjin guild channel was filled with coughs. If it wasn't for Wang Yu, their guild wouldn't even exist. Wuji still dared to brag. How shameless. I believe you. Blood Red War flag didn't doubt Wuji's words at all. At the same time, they were shocked by Wuji's dominance. Xuanjin could hold on for 10 minutes. Even if they lost the encampment, it would be a glorious loss. These guys could easily say that they could hold on for another 10 minutes. This was really, the other side has gathered. Let's get into formation. After exchanging greetings, Blood Red War flag said enthusiastically. Wuji said, we don't need formation for now. We have to think about how to charge out. How do we charge out? Blood Red War flag was confused by Wuji's words. Even if it was a low-level encampment, the gate wasn't narrow. Would it be difficult for 500 people to charge out? Look over there. Wuji pointed at the gate of Chuanjin's encampment. Blood-red war flag looked in the direction Wuji was pointing at, and Wang Yu was stunned. Chapter 422. With such a gate and the strength of these people, if nothing went wrong, they would be able to block for 20 minutes. Blood-red war flag said enviously, "It would be great if our base was like this. No matter how many people we have, we would be able to defend." Wuji smiled. "Everything has its pros and cons. We have no choice but to do this. You have so many people. Are you willing to be bullied?" Naturally, they had to use the terrain to their advantage. However, Blood Alliance was a huge guild. No matter which guild they faced, they didn't have a disadvantage in numbers. Such a terrain was useless. After all, if others couldn't enter, they couldn't get out either. The setting of the encampment battle in Rebirth was also very reasonable. If the base was attacked and it wasn't broken within 60 minutes, the attacking side would fail and the defending side wouldn't receive any rewards. At most, it would be a draw. Only by completely defeating the enemy or wiping out the entire team would it be considered a true victory. Not only would there be victory rewards, but there would also be war reparations. There would also be a system announcement. How wonderful was it to be able to deal a physical and mental blow to the enemy? For a huge guild like Blood Alliance to be stuck at home and only be able to defend and not attack, that would be the greatest tragedy. Blood Red War Flag thought about it. That's true. However, with 500 of us, it won't be easy for all of us to get out. Wuji said, "It really won't be easy, but our base can only hold 500 people. If we all die and let others teleport in, do you think they will respawn there?" This Blood Red War Flag was stunned. Blood Red War Flag hadn't thought about this before. After all, Chuanjin was too special. The initial population of a base was 500. If they upgraded the residences, the maximum capacity could be 2,000. As for the intermediate and high levels, there was no need to talk about the larger ones. They could accommodate hundreds of thousands to millions of players. The first thing a normal guild would do after obtaining a base would be to do quests, earn contribution points, upgrade residences, strengthen defenses, and quickly increase the population and defense capacity to the maximum. However, Chuanjin's people were quite stubborn. They even tried their best to keep the number of quests in the negatives. This was why such a situation could only happen in Chuanjin. "Don't tell me they'll spawn at the resurrection point in the city?" Blood Red War Flag asked, scratching its head. Wuji said, "The system has set players to respawn at the nearest resurrection point when they die." Blood Red War Flag was stunned. "Are you saying that our people will respawn at the enemy's resurrection point?" "Yes, very likely." Wuji nodded. It seemed that Blood Red War Flag wasn't stupid. *M, this is getting interesting. Blood Red War Flag immediately became excited when heard that. It was common knowledge that when attacking a base, a respawn point would appear behind the attacking side. If the defending side appeared behind the attacking side, they would be surrounded from both sides. Of course, when they had the absolute advantage in numbers, they could surround the resurrection point. A temporary resurrection point did not have the effect of a safe zone. Even if the opponent resurrected once a minute, the remaining time was enough to kill him dozens of times. Based on Wuji's personality, he must have been planning such a sinister plan from the very beginning. Thinking of this, Blood Red War Flag broke out in a cold sweat. Once again, it was fortunate that it had been smart to not make this guy an enemy. He was too vicious. "So, I'll lead my people to their deaths first. Then, you can bring your people in. Finally, we'll give them something exciting," Wuji said with a smile. "Okay." Blood Red War Flag nodded fiercely. On the Wind and Cloud Guild side, all their guild members had entered the battlefield. None of the players from the 4 guilds were absent. This was normal. They were paid to work. The cohesiveness of money was stronger than any guild's brotherhood. The Lai Hole warlord and the sudden change of winds and clouds watched as their people entered the battlefield. The trauma of being brutally slaughtered by Wang Yu dissipated significantly. "That bastard won't come again, right?" War Sovereign Lai Hole looked around and said. Sudden Change said, "Just now, We didn't have enough people, so he took advantage of an opening. Now that we have so many people, we'll make sure he doesn't return. Why are there only 500 people on their side? War Sovereign Lihua looked at the number of people on the battlefield and asked curiously. Sudden Change said in disdain, "TSH, such a small base can only hold 500 people. I'm surprised that they actually found helpers. They probably bought mercenaries," War Sovereign Lihua guessed. There was a hiring system in the game. In the mercenary hall, players could issue hiring quests and hire players from other guilds to fight for them. Since Xuanjin had a conflict with Xiaobing Studio, they naturally weren't poor. It was reasonable that they could hire 500 people. While the two were talking, the two sides at the entrance of the base suddenly started fighting. Wuji led Xuanjin and the others to take off their equipment. Without using skills or attacking, they charged into the Wind and Cloud Guild's formation. In just one round, Wuji and the others were sent to be revived. At the same time, Blood Alliance followed suit and charged. The result was the same. They were all wiped out by the Wind and Cloud Guild. Oh, these guys want to charge out? War Sovereign Lihua looked at the white light in front of him and smiled proudly. We can't go in, but do you think they can come out? The terrain worked both ways. Xuanjin could stop a few hundred people with a few dozen people. It was easy for the Wind and Cloud Guild to stop them with a few thousand people. Sudden Change looked at the fearless players on Xuanjin's side and mumbled, "They only have 500 people. It's not a problem to let them out." With the terrain of the canyon, the two sides would at most end in a draw. Wind and Cloud Guild's advantage in numbers wouldn't be of much use. If they let the people inside out and fought in an open space, it wouldn't be difficult for 2,000 people to wipe out 500 people. That's right, I think so too. War Sovereign Lihua chuckled and ordered, "Open the entrance and let them out." Wind and Cloud Guild received the order and quickly retreated a dozen meters, distancing themselves from the canyon. Seeing this, Blood Red War Flag messaged Wuji. "They're letting them in." Wuji said, "Don't worry about him. Let half of them out first, and keep the other half to push forward." Okay. Blood Red War Flag received the message and gave the order in the guild channel. For a full 5 to 6 minutes, the casualties on Xuanjin's side kept increasing. However, Wind and Cloud Guild had 0 casualties. Sudden Change quickly realized that something was wrong. Why do I feel that something is wrong? What's wrong? These weaklings can't even take a hit. War Sovereign Lihua was still basking in the joy of 0 casualties. Chapter 423. Come to think of it, something isn't right. Hearing Feng Yun's words, the Raging Fire Warlord also felt that something was amiss. In a siege battle, there was a time limit for resurrection. Even if they had 500 people, they couldn't keep dying like this. As he said this, the Raging Fire Warlord opened the system menu and looked at the number of participants. Attackers, 2,000 defenders, 5,745 D *MN. What's going on? Seeing the number of people in Xuanjin increase by so much and that it was still increasing, the Raging Fire Warlord was shocked. At this time, Feng Yun also noticed the change in numbers. He said in shock, "More than 5,000 people? How is that possible? There are only a few hundred people in front of us now. Furthermore, how can a low-level encampment hold so many people? Could it be?" Feng Yun looked back as he spoke. He saw a sea of people behind him, filling up the entire Sunset Valley. Seeing this scene, Feng Yun was stunned on the spot. How did they get behind us? Before the Raging Fire Warlord could react to Feng Yun's sudden change, he heard someone behind him shout, "Kill them." Then, the sky was filled with magic arrows that rained down from the sky. The two leaders of Wind and Cloud Guild were scared out of their wits. The others were busy blocking the other players coming out of Xuanjin. They had no idea that they were being ambushed. By the time they heard the commotion behind them, the Blood Alliance's attacks had already landed. As one of the top guilds, the Blood Alliance's players were definitely not weak. Their equipment was not much worse than Wind and Cloud Guilds. Under the same conditions, 6,000 people versus 2,000 people was a huge difference in numbers. Under such circumstances, they were completely suppressed. Blood Alliance's sneak attack killed 1/5 of Wind and Cloud Guild's players. When a second wave of attacks landed, the players who had been severely injured were also killed. Wind and Cloud Guild's players had no time to counterattack. In less than a minute, all 2,000 of them were killed. That was not the end. Wind and Cloud Guild's players were killed again as soon as they resurrected. The people guarding the resurrection point were led by people from Quanjun. Every time they killed, they would deliberately leave a few survivors. It wasn't that they didn't have the ability to annihilate Guild of Wind and Cloud. Rather, they didn't want to annihilate Guild of Wind and Cloud. After all, Guild of Wind and Cloud's members would be teleported out of the battlefield. Xuanjin wanted to kill them a few more times. The members of Wind and Cloud were killed again and again after reviving. After dying a few times, they finally realized what these guys were trying to do. The members of Wind and Cloud Guild were very realistic, professional fighters. They would never fight to the death just because of their pride. Under such a one-sided situation, they quickly recognized the situation and decisively retreated from the battlefield. The number of people from Wind and Cloud Guild decreased as time went on. In the end, the system notification, Xuanjin Guild has annihilated Wind and Cloud Guild and won the encampment battle. As the victor, Xuanjin Guild has obtained Wind and Cloud Guild's crystal contract. After the system announcement, a contract appeared in Wuji's hand. Crystal contract. Wind Cloud Guild's crystal contract. Would you like to destroy Wind Cloud Guild's crystal? Air. Just this? I thought it was compensation. Mingdu looked at the contract that Wuji showed and pouted unhappily. What do you know? Wuji said, this is what we're extorting for compensation. After saying that, Wuji said to Blood Red War Flag, wait until we get the compensation, then we'll give you the military expenses. Blood Red War Flag had sent so many people this time. They couldn't let them get nothing at all. If it was just Blood Red War Flag, it would be fine. However, they had so many people under them. It wouldn't be right if they didn't give them some benefits. The people from Xuanjin were always very loyal to their friends. Blood Red War Flag smiled. I trust Boss Wuji's character. There's no rush. Blood Red War Flag knew that Wuji had many methods of extortion. As the saying goes, wool comes from the sheep. Wind Cloud Guild was definitely going to bleed this time. After guarding the Xuanjin base, Blood Red War Flag exchanged some pleasantries with Wuji before bringing their people back to Yuhuicheng. At this time, Lai Hul Warlord added Wuji as a friend. Our boss wants to talk to you. Okay, Wuji replied plainly. Then, he said to the people from Xuanjin, is there anyone who wants money from me? I died a few times today. I have to train my level back up. My demon level has been reset to 0. My heart hurts. I want to be alone. Don't look at me. I'm just a kid. I'm a woman. Wuji was looking for people to be his bodyguards. These fellows from a Xuanjin school would be able to get their share of the money in minutes. As for the job of being a bodyguard, these people thought to themselves, I'm not a lackey. Whoever wants to do it can do it. Seeing the group of people using all kinds of reasons to pass the buck, Wuji was furious. His head was covered in a red bruise. In the end, Wang Yu was more honest. He said to Wuji, I'll go with you. Old cow, you're the most reliable at crucial times. Wuji grabbed Wang Yu's hands. He was so touched that tears welled up in his eyes. Wang Yu shook off Wuji's hands and said in disgust, with your abilities, I'm afraid they'll kill you. If they reveal the contract, we'll be beaten up for nothing. Wuji was speechless. The location of the negotiation was Yuhuicheng Tavern. Everyone was familiar with this place. It was a good place to negotiate. When Wang Yu and Wuji arrived at the tavern, the people from Wind and Cloud Guild were already there. Wind and Cloud Guild was losing money this time, so not many people came. There were only familiar faces like Lai Hul Warlord, Sudden Change of Wind and Cloud, and Shifu. The only stranger was a level 10 paladin. The paladin sat at the table. Lai Hul Warlord and the others stood behind the paladin. The scene was very well done. It looked like a triad negotiation. This paladin was none other than the boss of Xiaobing's workshop, Li Xiaobing. Wuji knew that she was the boss. He gestured for Wang Yu to sit down, then said to Lai Hul Warlord and the others, sit down. Don't care what you do in real life. Don't do that in the game. It's boring. War venerate Lai Hua, and the others glanced at Li Xiaobing. Li Xiaobing nodded, and everyone sat down. Wu Ji asked again, "What would you like to drink?" No one said anything. Wu Ji pointed at Li Xiaobing and said to Server C, "1 bottle for each of you." "I'll have 2. It's on you, brother." Attendant C was an intelligent C, so when he heard Wu Ji's words, he immediately ran towards Li Xiaobing. Li Xiaobing's face twitched. With a complicated expression, she took out a gold coin and handed it to the server. Chapter 4:24. Li Xiaobing spoke unhurriedly. She wanted to exert some pressure on the two of them so that she could take the initiative in the negotiation. After all, in Li Xiaobing's eyes, Wu Ji and Wang Yu were just 2 otakus who barely managed to deal with her with their luck. Little did she know that Wang Yu was simple-minded. Any kind of pressure couldn't affect him. Wu Ji was even more impressive. He was in the Chinese Academy of Sciences and had seen the country's leaders. How could he be scared by a mere studio boss? Therefore, the two of them were quite calm when they heard Li Xiaobing's words. Wu Ji replied casually, "Oh, I don't want to know who you are. You just need to know that we are here to talk about compensation." Li Xiaobing's expression changed slightly. She smiled and said, "Actually, I really didn't expect you to win." Wu Ji said, "I also didn't expect that I would be tricked by you." Li Xiaobing smiled and looked at Wang Yu. Then she said slowly, "Actually, it doesn't matter to me whether you win or not this time because I just want to sit down and talk with you." A smart person could hide a hidden meaning in a few simple words. Li Xiaobing opened the door to show her power first. Wang Yu and Wu Ji were both calm. Later, Li Xiaobing flattered Wu Ji and said, "I'm a wily old fox. You're still too young." Wu Ji calmly gave her a taste of her own medicine. "No matter how old you are, you still fall into my hands." After 2 rounds, Li Xiaobing suddenly felt that the guy in front of her was more difficult to deal with than she had imagined. Only then did she calm down and start to talk business. "Oh, what do we have to talk about?" Wu Ji raised his eyebrows and asked. Wu Ji liked smart people, but he didn't like businessmen like Li Xiaobing who put profit first in everything. President Wu Ji is a sensible person, so I won't beat around the bush. Do you think it's interesting for us to continue like this in the current pharmaceutical market? Since both of them were well aware of the situation, Li Xiaobing didn't need to pretend to be ignorant. Wu Ji sneered. "I'm just a gamer, not a businessman. As long as I'm having fun, it's fine. Whether it's interesting or not, it has nothing to do with us." Li Xiaobing smiled and said, "There's no need for us to fight over this. I have a suggestion that satisfies both sides. I wonder if President Wu Ji is interested. Tell me, how about we work together? The pharmaceutical market is a big cake. It can't be swallowed by just a few people. Only if we cooperate. What do you think?" Li Xiaobing said temptingly. "Nothing much." Wu Ji shook his head and said, "I'm here to talk about the contract. I don't want more. I'll take the contract for 100,000 gold coins. I don't want to talk about anything else, and I'm not interested in it." The current value of 100,000 gold coins was equivalent to 10,000 gold coins before the official operation. This was the current standard value of a guild's base. President Wu Ji, 100,000 gold coins is nothing to me. You have to know that if we cooperate, the profit we can get is more than 100,000 gold coins. Li Xiaobing was right. The pharmaceutical machine market was so big, and Xiaobing's studio was good at monopolizing. When the time came, not to mention advanced potions, even intermediate potions could be sold at sky-high prices. "No." Wu Ji shook his head. Li Xiaobing was puzzled why. From the various information collected by Xiaobing's studio, the people in Xuanzhen were people who wouldn't get up early if there were no benefits. The benefits in front of him were so rich, and this person refused without even thinking about it. Did he think that the benefits were not enough? Wu Ji said, "There's no reason. I just don't like you as a person." A gentleman loved money, and he took it in the right way. Wu Ji could play along with Xiaobing's studio. However, Xiaobing's studio launched a base war and wanted to whitewash Li Shui and the others. This kind of behavior made Wu Ji feel disgusted with Li Xiaobing. A person who could even do this kind of thing, it would be good if he didn't cheat his friends. How much benefits could he expect? Wu Ji wouldn't even believe the punctuation marks that Li Xiaobing drew now. You. Li Xiaobing was speechless by Wu Ji. I just don't like you as a person. Such a far-fetched reason was a bit inexplicable in the ears of Li Xiaobing, who believed in the saying, there are no eternal friends, only eternal interests. Is this something a smart person should do? Wu Ji ignored Li Xiaobing's surprise, took out the contract, and asked, do you have anything else? If not, pay the money, and I will return the contract to you immediately. Li Xiaobing glanced at the contract and didn't intend to pay. Instead, she said coldly, I think you will cooperate with us. When she said this, Li Xiaobing's face had a hint of ruthlessness. Oh, why? Wu Ji asked. Li Xiaobing smiled and said, didn't you feel that when you were guarding the encampment, you were missing one person? Missing one person? Wu Ji and Wang Yu looked at each other and began to recall the battle just now. Ma Li and the other two were there. Li Shui was sent to the safe zone, and only Mu Zixian didn't appear. Mu Zixian. Wu Ji immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Wang Yu also realized this and quickly sent a message to Mu Zixian. Wife, where are you? Mu Zixian quickly replied, there's a workshop in Wind City that wants to clear out their inventory. I'm looking at the materials in their guild warehouse. As expected, as a housewife, Mu Zixian especially liked things like clearance discounts. Li Xiaobing used such a despicable method to trick her away. Now, Mu Zixian still didn't know that she had been kidnapped. Wang Yu was startled at first. When he thought of this, an evil fire rushed to his head. This is a game. What's the point of kidnapping her? Wu Ji frowned and asked Li Xiaobing. Li Xiaobing saw their expressions and knew that she had hit the nail on the head, so she said proudly, that woman is your main sales channel, right? A lot of materials and inventory should also be under her name. Of course, I don't really expect to kidnap her in real life, but without her, your losses will definitely be no less than if your encampment was breached. Li Xiaobing was right. Other than the money that Li Xiaobing had cheated away, Wang Yu and his wife's money was all in the shop. This kind of real estate transaction needed to be done in person. Now that Li Xiaobing had done this, it was basically equivalent to sealing Mu Zixian's account. How about it? Boss Wu Ji, can we cooperate this time? Li Xiaobing still had a smile on her face, but there was a hint of threat in her words. Wu Ji lowered his head and didn't say anything. Wang Yu's hair was already standing on end. Li Xiaobing said again, I can give you time to consider, but not much. Chapter 425. Li Xiaobing heard this and smiled. No. Wu Ji leader, you don't understand the current situation. Do you think that with Blood Alliance behind you, you can do whatever you want? The market is a matter between studios. If Blood Alliance wants to interfere, they have to think twice. Li Xiaobing heard Wu Ji say this and thought that Wu Ji was threatening him. Blood Alliance had always been high profile and didn't hide their help this time. Naturally, Li Xiaobing knew that they had lost to Blood Alliance this time. However, studios were the second biggest power in the gaming circle apart from the large esports clubs. They controlled the resources and market in the game. Although their connections couldn't compare to the big guilds, they were still quite important. If they worked together, even Blood Alliance wouldn't dare to offend them. Seeing Li Xiaobing being so arrogant, Wu Ji was speechless. He snorted coldly and didn't want to waste any more time with him. However, Li Xiaobing still said recklessly, Boss Wu Ji, you don't have much time left. You must have a close relationship with that woman since you gave such an important channel to her. I have a good temper, but my subordinates don't have good tempers. That girl is pretty. Shut up. Before Li Xiaobing could finish, Wang Yu roared and stood up. Wang Yu's shout shocked everyone at the table, especially Wu Ji. He had known Wang Yu for so long and knew that although this guy was a warrior, he had a good upbringing and rarely got angry. Li Xiaobing had really hit his bottom line this time. After all, although there weren't many moral restraints in the game, and murder was a common occurrence, and kidnapping wasn't considered a heinous crime, no man would want his wife to be used as a bargaining chip. Moreover, Li Xiaobing's last sentence was obviously asking for death. If it was just a kidnapping, as long as Li Xiaobing was willing to let go, Wang Yu would at most kill him a few times to vent his anger. However, Li Xiaobing actually allowed his subordinates to violate Mu Zixian. This caused the usually good-tempered Wang Yu to completely explode. This bastard in front of him must not be let off. The Lai Huo warlord, Shifu, and the others all knew how powerful Wang Yu was. When they saw Wang Yu stand up, they were shocked. They all stood up, took a step back, and drew their weapons. Oh, and this is? Li Xiaobing only knew that the president of Chuanjin was Wu Ji. She couldn't match the others at all. She felt that she had more people on her side, so she was not afraid. Her expression was still calm, but she didn't notice that her subordinates had been scared by Wang Yu and had goosebumps. Wu Ji said, "This is the lady's husband. In other words, you kidnapped his wife." Fuck. When the Lai Huo warlord and sudden change of winds and clouds heard this, they were so scared that they almost dropped the weapons in their hands. This guy stabbed people's eyes when he attacked. He was vicious and ruthless. If he was angry, even if everyone attacked together, they would not be a match for him. How could their boss kidnap his wife? Oh, Li Xiaobing nodded and said, "So all the more reason for you to agree. Isn't that right, big brother?" Li Xiaobing's last sentence was directed at Wang Yu. Wang Yu stared at Li Xiaobing and said with a murderous look, "Let her go, and I will pretend this never happened." Oh, so you are willing to cooperate? I just don't know if you can represent President Wu Ji. Li Xiaobing seemed to feel that something was wrong with the atmosphere. However, with the Lai Huo warlord and the others here, he didn't think that Wang Yu would dare to make a move. He thought that Wang Yu was begging him. Wang Yu said with red eyes, "I am not negotiating with you. I am warning you." Li Xiaobing smiled and said provocatively, "What if I say no? I will make you wish you were dead, and then you'll be kicked out of this game." Wang Yu said word by word. Li Xiaobing laughed and said, "Ha, big brother, many people have said the same thing to me. Without exception, the more you boast, the worse your end will be. Shifu, teach this brother a lesson." "Huh? Me?" Shifu's expression was uglier than if he were to cry. "What? You don't want to listen to me anymore?" Li Xiaobing said angrily. "Fine." Li Xiaobing was the boss after all. Since he was eating his food, he was naturally under his control. No matter how unreasonable Li Xiaobing's orders were, Shifu didn't dare disobey. He could only bite the bullet and swing his sword. At the same time, he said to the others in the channel, "Help me." When Wang Yu saw Shifu looking at him, he dodged to the side. Shifu jumped lightly and swung his sword at Wang Yu again. "Yo, chain slash. You're an expert." Wu Ji was slightly surprised when he saw Shifu's movements. In the system mode, the swing of a sword had to go from the starting point to the finishing point. The process was not as smooth as in the manual mode. As a result, players in the system mode could not attack as quickly as in the manual mode. However, in the manual mode, the player's attack completion rate was low and their hit rate was low. Their attack power could not keep up. To make up for this shortcoming, the experts in the system mode had developed the skill of chain slash. Once the sword was swung, the player would jump to stop the swing and then swung his sword again. The skill of this skill was determined by the height of the player's jump. The lower the jump, the faster the slash, and the stronger the rhythm of the attack. From Shifu's jump, it was obvious that he was not weak. Of course, whether he was weak or not depended on his opponent. In the eyes of an expert in the manual mode like Wang Yu, the so-called skills of the players in the system mode could not be considered as a combat method. Before Shifu's second slash, Wang Yu had already cut into Shifu's chest. He grabbed Shifu by the neck and tossed him onto the table. Rock rush. At that moment, sudden change of circumstances waved his staff, and a huge stone pillar rose from beneath Wang Yu. The Lai Huo warlord and Zhu Wuxian moved to the sides, forming a circle to block Wang Yu's path. Wang Yu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. He rolled forward and swung his universe saber out of its scabbard. A circle of saber light swept toward everyone present. Grandmasters of combat had always been weak in AoE attacks. Ever since he discovered that this skill could be used in AoE attacks, Wang Yu often used this skill when he was outnumbered. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. This slash was a critical hit. For flashes of white light flashed, and Shifu, the Lai Huo warlord, and the other two were instantly reduced to white light by Wang Yu's slash. Sudden change of circumstances was indeed an expert. Before he died, he had placed a shield of earth on Li Xiaobing. Surprisingly, Li Xiaobing, a level 10 smurf, had survived. With the shield of earth shattered, Li Xiaobing had a look of disbelief on her face. She looked at Wang Yu as if she was looking at a monster. These four were the strongest players in Xiaobing's workshop. How could they be killed in just 2 rounds? Was she dreaming? Before Li Xiaobing could react, Wang Yu jumped in front of Li Xiaobing and grabbed her in his hand, just as he was about to swing his saber and kill her. Chapter 426. Hearing Wuji's words, Wang Yu immediately stopped. That's right. Wind City was huge. There were guild encampments everywhere. If Li Xiaobing did not say anything, who knew where Mu Zixian was? According to Mu Zixian, that guild was called Twilight Guild. After Wang Yu received the news, he immediately asked Tiger of Counterattack, who used to play in Wind City. Tiger of Counterattack said that he had never heard of Twilight Guild. It seemed that Twilight Guild was a small guild that even the veteran players of Wind City did not know. After all, even a large guild like Wind and Cloud did not reveal themselves. It was reasonable for Twilight Guild to be unknown. Moreover, Li Xiaobing was only a level 10 player. His level was definitely not important to him. Killing him would be letting him off too easily. Seeing that Wang Yu had stopped, Li Xiaobing sorted out his panicked expression and said proudly, "Not bad. Your wife is in my hands. If you kill me, don't even think about knowing where she is. How about it? Can we talk about working together now?" "Talk my ass." Li Xiaobing once again used Mu Zixian as a threat. Wang Yu's anger flared again. He turned to Wuji and said, "Heal him, don't let him die." Saying that, Wang Yu grabbed Li Xiaobing's wrist with his left hand and lifted Li Xiaobing's elbow with his right hand. With a crack, Li Xiaobing's arm was twisted out of shape. Although Wu Ji was an outsider, he could tell that the bones were broken. The authentic tendon dislocation hand was a joint technique. Even if the target was dislocated, as long as Wang Yu was willing, he could straighten the bones back. This time, Wang Yu was more angry. He did not even think about straightening the bones and directly did something to the bones. 997 inches the game, this kind of joint technique did not have high damage. In addition, Wang Yu did not use the authentic technique, so Li Xiaobing did not die. Although there was no pain in the game, there was still the pressure of having one's bones broken. Even the bystanders felt uncomfortable when they heard it, let alone Li Xiaobing. Li Xiaobing's face turned ashen when she saw her 3-section arm. She suddenly had a feeling that she wanted to die. How could Wuji let him die so easily? He waved his staff and cast 2 healing spells. Li Xiaobing's HP was restored. At the same time, Wang Yu grabbed Li Xiaobing's left leg and pulled it from behind to Li Xiaobing's right shoulder. The sound of bones breaking caused Wuji's scalp to go numb. This was really worse than death. Luckily, this was in the game. If it was in reality, Wang Yu would have been killed instantly. Wang Yu grabbed Li Xiaobing's palm and threatened, "Are you going to tell me or not? If you don't, I'll break your bones one by one." Wang Yu also underestimated Li Xiaobing's endurance. In the game, no matter how you tortured someone, there was no pain. Most people were not even afraid of death. Mu Zixian was related to the fundamental interests of Li Xiaobing. How could Li Xiaobing compromise so easily? Li Xiaobing looked like a troublemaker and said, "If you think I can compromise with this, then you can torture me." Humph. Wang Yu looked at Li Xiaobing and knew that this grandson was not afraid of him. He then snorted and slapped Li Xiaobing into white light. Wuji was shocked. "Why did you kill him before he even said anything? Do you think he will tell us?" Wang Yu asked. Wuji scratched his head and said, "Let's promise him first, then we'll be able to trick him." From the beginning, Wuji wanted to stall for time. Who knew that Wang Yu would be so angry and directly make a move? It was no wonder no one would be able to remain calm in this situation. "I'm disgusted by him. I don't want to compromise with him." "Then do you have a way to get him out?" "Yes." As he said this, Wang Yu opened his friend's list and asked Mu Zixian, "Do you know that you've been kidnapped?" "Kidnapped?" Mu Zixian was stunned for a moment when she heard that. Then, She looked around and realized that she was surrounded by people. Moreover, they were all secretly staring at her. Immediately, she reacted. At first, Mu Zixian thought that these people had never seen a beauty before. I think so. What's the use of kidnapping in the game? Mu Zixian asked curiously. If I kidnap you, then the shop will be gone. Wang Yu said, in Rebirth, players' shops had to pay taxes. If the shop owner didn't come online for a period of time, the shop will be taken back by the system. Then, Wang Yu said, can you kill yourself and come back? After calming down, Wang Yu's brain was still very good. Mu Zixian quickly replied, in the safe zone, I can't kill myself. Then do you know your current location? Wang Yu asked again. I'll observe first, then I'll tell you. Mu Zixian used to be a customer service employee in the game. Mu Zixian knew the map information in the game better than any other player in the game. Therefore, she didn't need to deliberately ask. She could determine her coordinates just by looking at the terrain. Moreover, Rebirth didn't have the same distribution of monsters in the main city. Even normal players could guess the monsters at the entrance of the guild encampment. After closing the chat with Wang Yu, Mu Zixian got up and walked towards the entrance of the guild encampment. This player from a small guild hurriedly stopped Mu Zixian and said, this is the guild's restricted area. Visitors are not allowed. Mu Zixian heard this and once again confirmed that she was really kidnapped. Then, she sized up the surroundings of the guild encampment. Not long after, Wang Yu received Mu Zixian's reply. The terrain is Sky Wind Ridge. There are a total of 3 guild encampments in Sky Wind Ridge. The lowest level encampment is between level 20 to 30. Let's go to Sky Wind City. After receiving Mu Zixian's message, Wang Yu got up and was about to leave. Wu Ji said, we only have a dozen people. If we rashly go and save people, I'm afraid the outcome will be very tragic. We can call Blood Red War Flag and the others. The other party is a studio. Blood Red War Flag has already helped us a lot by helping us defend our encampment. If we ask them to cross the city and attack another guild, I'm afraid Blood Red War Flag won't be able to make the decision. Wu Ji said indifferently. Blood Alliance was a business guild. When they did things, they had to consider benefits. If they offended a studio for no reason, the boss of Blood Alliance would definitely not be happy. Wang Yu didn't know what to say. Moreover, even if we attack Twilight Guild's encampment, how much damage do you think we can do to Xiaobing Studio? Will they be afraid? Xiaobing Studio was a large studio. There would definitely be more than one encampment like this. Attacking one of them wouldn't hurt them at all. Then what do you think they're most afraid of? Wang Yu asked with a slight headache. Li Xiaobing wasn't even afraid of the tendon dislocation hand. Wang Yu couldn't think of what he would be afraid of. Wu Ji laughed and said, Li Xiaobing is a businessman. What he's most afraid of is having no money and no market. So, we have to find professional help for this kind of thing. Chapter 427. Brother, I heard that you have a big deal. The person who sent the message was Evildoers Run Wild. Wang Yu opened the message bar and could feel Evildoers Run Wild's impatient aura even though he was thousands of miles away. How did you know? Wang Yu asked, puzzled. The confrontation between Xuanjin and Xiaobing Studio had only happened in the past 2 days. Wang Yu and Evildoers Run Wild rarely contacted each other in the game, so he didn't tell Evildoers Run Wild. Evildoers Run Wild said, the forum was in a mess at first. I tried to figure it out, but I heard from my people that Xiaobing Studio has joined forces with a lot of studios, and they're determined to cooperate with you. Oh, it didn't look for you? Wang Yu asked again. To move unhindered was undoubtedly the biggest force in the studio, but Li Xiaobing didn't look for Evildoers Run Wild. My studio is too big, so he doesn't dare to look for me. What's wrong? Have you reached an agreement with him? It's better to work with me than to work with him. After all, we should keep the goodies within our own fields. Rampant, the demon blabbered on. Wang Yu was speechless. It turned out that this kid was here to talk business with him. Cooperation, my ass. Those be asterisk cheese kidnapped your sister-in-law and threatened me. I don't know how to deal with them. How can I cooperate with him? Evildoers Run Wild paused for a while and repeated in disbelief. Xiaobing Studio kidnapped my sister-in-law. Yeah, She's locked up in the Twilight Guild station in Wind City. Speaking of this, Wang Yu said with some anger and amusement, "Kid, didn't you brag to me? Where are your hundreds of thousands of men? Lend me some to wipe out Xiaobing's studio." Wang Yu had once been ambushed by members of Reigning the World, so he knew that the demon rampage had quite a few subordinates under him. However, Wang Yu subconsciously never thought that there would come a day when he would need the help of the guy who he had bullied since he was a child. Hence, he did not think about this matter for a moment. Since the demon rampage had come knocking on his door, he would not let him go so easily. F***CK, this bunch of trash, where are you now? Evildoers Run Wild asked Wang Yu. Yu Huicheng Tavern. Wait for me, I'll be right there. Wang Yu was stunned for a moment. What's the use of you doing it yourself? Cut the crap. Wait for me. Wang Yu was speechless. This brat had really grown up. He even dared to talk to him like this. Seeing Wang Yu's expression, Wu Ji asked with a smile, "Did the professionals look for you?" Wang Yu nodded. Compared to Chuanjin, Evildoers Run Wild was indeed a professional. "How many people did you bring?" Wu Ji asked again. "I don't know." Wang Yu shook his head. Wu Ji said to himself, "I hope I can bring more." 10 minutes later, Evildoers Run Wild came to the tavern in a hurry. "Boss, tell me, what should we do about this?" Evildoers Run Wild sat down and asked directly. Before Wang Yu spoke, Wu Ji asked with a smile, "Evildoer boss, tell me how many people you have first." "I don't have many people with time, so I stopped working in the mine." "Is 100,000 people enough?" asked Evildoers Run Wild. 100,000? F***CK. Even people like Wang Yu and Wu Ji, who were used to big scenes, could not help but be shocked by Evildoers Run Wild's boldness. "If it's not enough, I'll stop working in other industries and ask everyone to come," said Evildoers Run Wild. To move unhindered. When they first entered the game, they had tens of thousands of members. They occupied most of the mining areas in the main cities. Evildoers Run Wild also made a lot of money and officially became the largest gaming studio in the gaming circle. Later, Evildoers Run Wild's business became bigger and bigger. Other than the lack of professionals in the pharmaceutical industry, they were involved in jewelry, armor materials, and all the other sub-industries. This was especially true for their main business, mining. Currently, all 300 major cities were monopolized by Unhinder the World. After the official launch of the game, a large number of players poured into the game, and Unhindered the World size immediately expanded to 200,000 members. In this era, where the number of players in a guild was usually measured in thousands, a guild with 200,000 people was definitely invincible. Even the strongest player would have to learn how to keep a low profile when facing such a huge monster. Wu Ji hurriedly said, "Enough, enough." At the same time, Wu Ji was secretly shocked. Evildoers Run Wild was really generous. Back then, 3 Evildoers Village had tens of thousands of people and was already the biggest guild in the industry. This guy was so young, but he actually made such a big scene. It seemed that Wang Yu's family was not as poor as he said. Wang Yu heard Evildoers Run Wild's words and was also shocked. Wang Yu thought that he knew his brother well. Evildoers Run Wild liked to talk big since he was young. So when he told Wang Yu that he had tens of thousands of followers, Wang Yu did not take it seriously. Who knew that this guy would really make such a big scene? He's really grown up. Wang Yu looked at Evildoers Run Wild, and then looked at himself. He suddenly felt that compared to his brother, he was missing something. That small guild is in Wind City's Sky Wind Ridge. The coordinates are, we have to. Wang Yu was just about to tell Evildoers Run Wild how to fight this battle. Evildoers Run Wild waved his hand and said boldly, "You don't have to tell me how to fight. Just tell me who to fight and how to fight. Fight Xiaobing Studio. Beat them up until they don't dare to stay in the game." Wang Yu was an honest person. Since he had already said it to Li Xiaobing, he naturally had to do what he said. "Okay, it's not the first time I've disliked these guys." Evildoers Run Wild said with a fierce look. Wu Ji took the opportunity to say, "These fellows have recently purchased quite a lot of potions and supplies in the guild. With those supplies, if they cooperate with our people, do you know what high-level potions are?" "Really?" Evildoers Run Wild was happy when he heard this. He had been coveting the huge profits in the potion market for a long time. Of course, Wuji smiled and said, "Okay, leave this to me." Evildoers Run Wild patted his chest and said, "Brother, just wait for me to bring sister-in-law back." After that, Evildoers Run Wild did not stop at all and rushed out of the tavern again. Wang Yu was speechless. He just came and left. Couldn't he just say it privately? Why did he have to make a trip? Wuji picked up the wine glass and drank it. Then he looked at the back of Evildoers Run Wild outside the window and said meaningfully, "I'm afraid Xiaobing Studio is going to become history." From the moment Li Xiaobing said that he kidnapped Mu Zixian, Wuji knew that Xiaobing Studio was finished. In Rebirth, except for noobs like Wang Yu, everyone knew that to move unhindered was the guild that should not be messed with. Xiaobing's workshop and reigning the world were competitors to begin with. Moreover, the evildoer Rampage had been eyeing Xiaobing's workshop like a tiger eyeing its prey. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't find a reason to do so, he would have long since made his move against Xiaobing's workshop, the company that controlled the largest profit chain in the game. Who knew that Xiaobing Studio would do such a thing now? They actually kidnapped Evildoers Run Wild's sister-in-law. Evildoers Run Wild was really someone who sent a pillow to Evildoers Run Wild just when he was about to doze off. Evildoers Run Wild would not let Xiaobing Studio off easily. Chapter 428. Although Li Xiaobing was the boss of Wind and Cloud Guild, she wasn't a member of Wind and Cloud Guild. After being killed by Wang Yu, Li Xiaobing resurrected at the Resurrection Point in Afterglow City. Then, she was brought to the office of Xiaobing Studio in Afterglow City. Li Xiaobing was furious. She didn't expect Wang Yu to be so stubborn. Not only did he attack her, but he also tortured her so badly. Thinking back to how Wang Yu tortured her, Li Xiaobing felt a chill down her spine. Seeing Li Xiaobing's dark expression, Dawn Moon Ice and the others didn't dare to say anything. The atmosphere in the office was extremely cold. After a long while, Li Xiaobing finally calmed down. "Boss, now that they aren't cooperating, what should we do?" Dawn Moon Ice asked softly. Actually, Dawn Moon Ice also felt that this was too much. Even if business failed, using such a method to force others, even if it succeeded, it wouldn't last long. Li Xiaobing said hatefully, "Forget it. Inform everyone to gather in Yu Huicheng and attack their base once more. I don't believe that Blood Alliance will dare to interfere with our work." Things had already escalated to such a stage, and Li Xiaobing didn't expect to cooperate. She could only forcefully pull out this nail. Dawn Moon Ice was troubled. Wind and Cloud Guild's crystal contract is still in their hands. Wind and Cloud Guild was the biggest guild under Xiaobing Studio. If they were destroyed by Chuanjin, their losses wouldn't be small. Li Xiaobing said, "Scoff, I just sent people to move the items in the guild storage to another base. One base isn't worth much, and their people are still in our hands. Just the loss of one shop is no less than ours." Dawn Moon Ice was speechless. In her impression, Li Xiaobing had always been a calculated businesswoman. This time, he was willing to risk his own losses to fight them. It seemed like Chuanjin had really angered him. "Okay, I will gather people now." Dawn Moon Ice thought about it, and helplessly sent a message to the other studios. "Destroy Chuanjin? We're businessmen, we can't do this kind of thing. Those who dare to open a studio would not be too stupid." After receiving the news from Xiaoya Bing, all the studios realized that Xiaoya Bing's studio wanted to use them as cannon fodder. Xiaoyu replied coldly, "We're not just destroying Chuanjin, we're destroying the entire gaming market. We can only do business properly without him." Once upon a time, studios were known as the cancer of gaming. Who would have thought that these people would have the opportunity to call others cancer? TSK, the game market? It's just the market for your Xiaobing studio, right? The people in charge of the studio replied coldly. Xiaobing's studio in Chuanjin currently monopolized the entire pharmaceutical market. Chuanjin was the strongest party. According to the principle of cooperation, it would be beneficial for all the studios to get rid of Chuanjin. However, the one with the most benefits was naturally the second largest studio, Xiaobing Studio, so no one was willing to work for free. Mother of Asterisk Cur, Xiaoyu coldly cursed and replied, If we destroy Chuanjin, our Xiaobing studio is willing to share 80% of the pharmaceutical market with everyone. 80%? When the big bosses of the studios heard this, they immediately perked up. As long as the game continued, the pharmaceutical market's prospects would be incomparably broad. Such a big cake, even if it was only 1%, it would be a huge profit for these small studios. It was obvious that Xiaobing Studio was willing to share 80% of the market, which was already their bottom line. After a moment of silence in the chat room, created by Xiaoyu coldly, the big bosses of the studios expressed their stance one after another. Let me say this first. We're not doing this because of the pharmaceutical market, but for the balance of the entire industry. Therefore, I hope that your Xiaobing studio will remember this favor. Of course, Xiaoyu coldly looked at this group of thick-skinned and black-hearted guys talking nonsense and secretly sighed at her heart. In this day and age, no one is a fool. All right, where do we meet? Yu Huicheng. All right, we'll be there in 20 minutes. To move unhindered here, Evildoers Run Wild had already obtained all the information about Xiaobing Studio. Xiaobing Studio was currently the biggest monopoly in the professional gaming circle. Currently, they owned large studios in 12 games, monopolizing the gaming market. Among them, the biggest was Rebirth. In Rebirth, Xiaobing Studio had a total of 10 guilds, and they were located at. The names were... The guild residences were, looking at the information in his hand, Evildoers Run Wild pointed at Wind City and said boldly to his subordinates, other than this Twilight Guild, wipe out all their residences and warehouses. Why don't you cleanse Twilight? Evildoers Run Wild grinned and said, because we need a reason. Wipe Twilight Guild last. All right. At this moment, all the bosses of the studios had arrived at Xiaobing's office. Their subordinates had also arrived at Yu Huicheng's office, ready to attack Chuanjin at any time. After some small talk, just as Xiaobing was about to deploy for the battle, a system notification flashed over everyone's heads. System notification. To move unhindered to launch a residence's battle against Wind and Cloud Guild. F*CK. Hearing this, all the players in the game were shocked. What day is it today? Is there a reward for participating in a guild battle? To move unhindered. Why are they here to join in the fun? To move unhindered. Don't tell me they are here to take revenge for Chuanjin. Wind and Cloud Guild had just finished their battle with Chuanjin. Although Chuanjin didn't lose, being challenged by others meant that they were provoked. It wasn't strange for them to get back at them. Someone retorted, Bullsh*T. To move unhindered. Who would collude with those hype dogs? That's true. To move unhindered was definitely the biggest guild in the game. To move unhindered. A small guild like Chuanjin wasn't even fit to carry shoes for move unhindered. After receiving this news, Li Xiaobing and the bosses of the studios were the most flabbergasted. Bossly, what's going on? To move unhindered. How did you offend that demon? Unhinder the world. That was the largest gaming studio in the gaming circle. They had a guild in every corner of the game. The 4 words, unhindered the world, were definitely true to their name. Even if all the gaming studios present were to be added together, they would not even be a third of the size of unhindered the world. Therefore, subconsciously, no one saw to move unhindered as a competitor. It was just like how no matter how big the triads in China were, they didn't dare to treat the country as an imaginary enemy. However, why would such a huge studio cause trouble for Xiaobing Studio for no reason? Chapter 429. If they did not help Xiaobing Studio, they would at most earn less. If they helped Xiaobing Studio and offended a guild that they should not have, it would be a disaster. Li Xiaobing was confused as well, but in order to calm the players down, she explained, "Don't worry, everyone. Wind and Cloud Guild has just lost a battle, and Reigning the World might be trying to take advantage of the situation. Xiaobing's workshop definitely has no grudges with Reigning the World. Bossly, don't lie to us." Everyone said doubtfully. To move unhindered or taking advantage of others was unheard of, but they believed that Li Xiaobing was a smart person. To move unhindered would not do something so stupid. Li Xiaobing swore, "I'm not lying." System notification. 1,000 Miles has launched a base battle against Money Gang. Just as Li Xiaobing finished her sentence, the system made another announcement. F***CK. You still dare to say that none of you can dominate the world? Seeing this announcement, everyone could no longer sit still. In the span of a few minutes, 2 guilds under Xiaobing's workshop had been attacked consecutively. None of them would believe that they had not provoked unhindered. Li Xiaobing panicked. She opened the chat room and asked in confusion, "What's going on?" The chat room was in a mess. Seeing Li Xiaobing, it calmed down. Someone replied, "I don't know." "Boss, you don't know either? I don't know. Have our resources been moved?" Li Xiaobing was most concerned about the resources of the studio. To move unhindered was fine. As long as they had the resources, they could just start over with a new name. Money Gang's leader, Qian Ningxin, said, "To move unhindered people are everywhere in the city. The teleportation point is completely blocked. Our people can't go back at all." There were 10 guilds under Xiaobing's studio, but Wind and Cloud Guild was the only one with real strength. The other guild were just storage for Xiaobing's studio. After all, the storage in the city cost money. The storage in the city was not only big, but it was also free. It was the best storage place. "Can't go back." Li Xiaobing was dumbfounded. She hurriedly said, "Everyone, return to your guilds and transport the supplies." In the end, the 10 guild leaders in the chat room gave the same answer. "The teleportation point is blocked by a lot of people. We can't return to the encampment at all." F***CK. Li Xiaobing was shocked and angry when she heard this. She only felt a loud bang, and her mind became blank. System announcement. Unhindered 4Cs has initiated a guild encampment war. System announcement. Unhindered of the 9 states has initiated a garrison war against the guild. Following that, a series of system announcements shocked the entire game world. At the same time, Li Xiaobing completely lost consciousness. The office of Xiaobing's studio was silent. Everyone was stunned and didn't know what to say. Boss Li, I suddenly remembered that my wife is giving birth today, so I'll be leaving first. My wife is also giving birth. I'm getting married today. Aren't you married? Can't you get married a second time? Boss Li, I do have something important to do today. If you need any help in the future, just contact me. Don't look for me for the next few days. The group of people tried their best to disassociate themselves from Xiaobing's studio and ran out of the office as if they were escaping. Who knew if Xiaobing's studio would still exist in the game after a few days? To move unhindered guilds from Xiaobing's studio were incomparable. In the face of absolute strength, any tactics were a joke. To move unhindered, 100,000 people were divided into 9 groups. First, they blocked the teleportation point so that the people from Xiaobing's studio could not return to the encampment. Then, with a crushing attitude, they took down all of Xiaobing's studio's encampments. Finally, they cleaned out all the resources in the encampment warehouse. Looking at the last of the 10 guilds that she had painstakingly built, Li Xiaobing finally came to her senses. Li Xiaobing knew that she had lost this time, but she had to understand why she had lost. She couldn't die in confusion. Hence, Li Xiaobing added Evildoers Run Wild as a friend. Demon Boss. After adding the friend request, Li Xiaobing sent a message. Yeah, Evildoers Run Wild knew that Li Xiaobing would add him as a friend. That's not right. Aren't you afraid of being criticized by the public? Li Xiaobing said indifferently. No matter what, a studio was still a business circle. Even in the game, it was fine if it was a normal player, but if a studio brazenly looted someone else's warehouse, in the eyes of industry insiders, it was a very low-end behavior. It would be criticized and targeted by all the players. To move unhindered was true. In the face of hundreds of millions of players, 200,000 was just a number. It had to be known that the power of the people's war was endless. Evildoers Run Wild said coldly, Boss Li, you're too forgetful. Have you forgotten what heinous things you've done? Compared to your behavior, I feel that I'm at least open and above board. Li Xiaobing's kidnapping of others to force them to cooperate could be regarded as kidnapping for extortion, while the evildoer's rampage was just a tit-for-tat type of revenge. Between the two, although Li Xiaobing's methods were brilliant, the nature of her methods was far inferior. Li Xiaobing said, I dare to swear that I've never done anything to let you down. To move unhindered. What a joke. To move unhindered, such a huge monster had already affected the balance of the game. No matter how arrogantly Xiaobing was, she wouldn't go to the point of seeking death. Just now, Li Xiaobing quietly thought for a long time and confirmed that she hadn't provoked them. To move unhindered. You're really forgetful. Evildoers Run Wild said, I'm at the teleport point in Wind City's west. If there's anything, we can talk face to face. Please wait for a moment. Li Xiaobing replied and rushed to Tianfeng City. Half an hour later, Li Xiaobing brought Dawn Ice and the others to the teleport point that Evildoer mentioned. Just as the subordinate had said, the teleportation point was tightly surrounded. A person was sitting cross-legged at a very conspicuous location. That person's face was very familiar, and he was currently staring at Li Xiaobing, who was inside the teleportation point. It's you. To move unhindered players, Li Xiaobing shouted. Are you Li Xiaobing? Evildoers Run Wild asked. As he spoke, Evildoers Run Wild waved his hand and signaled for his subordinate to release Li Xiaobing. I can't believe that you actually spent money to bribe someone to move unhindered, Li Xiaobing said unwillingly. From his point of view, if someone from domination was willing to help, then Wang Yu must have spent a lot of money. Evildoers Run Wild said, I'm Evildoers Run Wild. Li Xiaobing was slightly taken aback. He sneered and said, What are you pretending for? Aren't you called Iron Ox? Iron Ox. Hee. Evildoers Run Wild laughed and said, That's my brother, my biological brother. Chapter 430. Brother? When Li Xiaobing heard Evildoers Run Wild's words, she felt as if her world had turned upside down. Dawn Moon's glacial frost and the others who accompanied her also had expressions of disbelief on their faces. The younger brother was the boss of the #1 guild in the game, while the older brother was entertaining himself in a small guild with only a dozen or so people. If it weren't for the fact that the two of them looked extremely similar, no one would have believed what Evildoers Run Wild said. Li Xiaobing was stunned on the spot, her mind full of thoughts. Since Wang Yu was Evildoers Run Wild's older brother, then the woman she kidnapped was Evildoers Run Wild's sister-in-law. This wasn't just poking a hornet's nest, it was practically detonating an atomic bomb. Originally, Li Xiaobing thought that Wang Yu's threat of making her life a living hell and not being able to survive in the game was just a boast made in anger. After all, life in the game was unlimited, and as a professional player, levels didn't have much of an effect on the Xiaobing. Therefore, no matter how cruel Wang Yu's methods were, he couldn't hurt Li Xiaobing's foundation. To move unhindered, who knew that Wang Yu's younger brother was actually the guild leader. There were many big guilds in the game, and each of the big clubs had enough capital. To move unhindered might not be invincible in the game, but in the area of studios, to move unhindered had the absolute right to speak. To move unhindered to this extent, Li Xiaobing didn't dare to hope that Evildoers Run Wild would allow her to survive in the game. Li Xiaobing was a person who would do things by hook or by crook. She never regretted doing something, but after hearing Evildoers Run Wild's words, not only did Li Xiaobing secretly regret, but her face was also filled with despair. Boss! Dawn Moon's glacial frost looked at Li Xiaobing's lifeless face and couldn't help but shout. Everyone disperse! Li Xiaobing waved her hand at Dawn Moon's glacial frost and the others and said calmly, What do you mean by dispersing? Xiao Yu's ice-cold face was ashen. Everyone was smart. Of course, Dawn of Ice and others could understand that Li Xiaobing didn't mean that they would go back to their own homes, but that the studio would be disbanded. The income of Xiaobing's studio was definitely the highest in the industry. If they were to disband, wouldn't that mean that a large number of people would lose their jobs? Dismiss, we've lost. Then Li Xiaobing said to Evildoers Run Wild, Evildoer boss, this is my fault. I'm willing to disband the studio, but my brothers have to make a living. I hope you won't make things difficult for them in the future. Li Xiaobing's character was not very good, but she was also a person who could take it up and let it go. Now that things had come to this, her performance was also very magnanimous. Boss! Dawn Moon, ice, and the others said in unison, let's try again. Li Xiaobing said, no, I can't drag you down because of me. That's it. Looking at these melodramatic guys, evildoers run wild touched his chin and said, looking at you guys like this, why do I feel that I'm the bad guy? Besides, my brother only said that you won't be able to survive in rebirth. Really? Hearing evildoers run wild's words, Li Xiaobing and the others suddenly showed a glimmer of hope. The studio industry was actually not for a specific game, but for the entire gaming industry. To move unhindered to such a large scale, as long as he was willing, he could definitely make Xiaobing's studio disappear in the gaming industry. However, listening to evildoers run wild's words, he didn't want to be ruthless. The current online gaming industry was very developed. Even if they lost the most valuable market, Rebirth, the studio would not starve to death. Evildoers Run Wild said, my brother said it, not me. Thank you. Li Xiaobing thanked Evildoers Run Wild with complicated feelings. Once upon a time, Li Xiaobing had made a name for herself in this game. However, in the blink of an eye, she had been completely swallowed up by someone else. Furthermore, she still had to thank the enemy who did not kill her. How ironic was that? After saying that, Li Xiaobing sent a message in the studio's chat room, and then everyone in Xiaobing's studio went offline. Evildoers Run Wild also received a notification. Twilight Guild has surrendered. After Li Xiaobing went offline, Evildoers Run Wild asked Wang Yu, who was sitting in the corner, are you really letting them go? Just now, Wang Yu asked Evildoers Run Wild to say that. Wang Yu said, didn't you already quit the game? People like this should be completely eliminated. Evildoers Run Wild said with some dissatisfaction. Wang Yu said, it's just a game. He's learned enough. Besides, his employees have to eat too. Mercy to the enemy is irresponsibility to yourself. Understand that, but you don't know when people are really forced to the point where they don't have food to eat, they would do even more outrageous things. Wang Yu said, really? You know? Wang Yu nodded, yes, I know. At this time, Mu Zixian also teleported out of Twilight Guild's base. Wang Yu walked over and put his arm around Mu Zixian's shoulder and said to Evildoers Run Wild, I'm so glad I met your sister-in-law. Evildoers Run Wild scratched his head in confusion. Mu Zixian pushed Wang Yu's hand away. What are you saying? How can you be so mushy in front of your brother? Can't you control yourself? It's nothing. I just think it's good to have you. Wang Yu smiled. Really? I'll cook something delicious for you tonight. Okay, you're back? When they returned to the Quanzhan sect's encampment, for the first time, everyone was present. No one was surprised that Wang Yu was able to successfully bring Mu Zixian back. After all, even reigning the world had made a move. It would be surprising if Wang Yu failed to bring her back. Well, chick, here's something for you. Wang Yu took out a black fragment from his bag and threw it to Place One's Pride. To Place One's Pride took the fragment and shouted excitedly, Uncle Nyo, I love you. To Place One's Pride took out 7 identical fragments and put them on the table. Then a purple light lit up. Everyone who was lucky enough to see the birth of an epic weapon shouted anxiously, damn, chick, quickly show the attributes. To Place One's Pride proudly showed the attributes. Thorn of Despair, glove, epic, inactive, hint, go to the land of despair and receive the quest to activate the Thorn of Despair from the Wandering Martial list. There's still a quest. To Place One's Pride said, with some disappointment. Everyone looked at To Place One's Pride with disdain and said, nonsense, do you think an epic weapon is so easy to get? Damn you, you're all jealous of me. Just when everyone was making a ruckus, Wuji walked in front of Wang Yu and said, I've decided to move unhindered from now on. How about it? Why did you suddenly think of this? Wang Yu spread his hands. Wuji said, an innocent man will get into trouble because of his wealth. Only when he is strong enough can he protect the things he wants to protect. To be honest, don't let the goodies flow to outsiders. What else? You destroyed Xiaobing's studio so thoroughly that the materials can't be sold at a high price. I knew it. P.S. Some people may say that the protagonist is a saint, but when a person is desperate, It is really scary. At this time last year, I was cheated and penniless. I wandered the streets and didn't dare to go home. I only ate 3 meals a week to thank the most important woman in my life. Fortunately, I have you. Thank you. Chapter 431. To move unhindered after Xiaobing Studio exited the game. They took over all of Xiaobing Studio's business. Xuanjin realized that they weren't cut out for business, so they simply threw all their resources to them. To move unhindered. To move unhindered was a big business, and the two guilds had a relationship with Wang Yu. Of course, evildoer wouldn't mistreat Xuanjin. After the resources were sold, Xuanjin made a huge profit, especially Li Shui and Wang Yu. To move unhindered, Li Shui now had 80% of her potions for sale and 20% for Mu Zixin's grocery store. Wang Yu didn't have to work every day to earn money. His days were pretty good. After Rebirth reached level 30, other than a few fixed-story dungeons, the rest of the gameplay had to be researched by the players themselves. Without the corresponding level dungeons, the leveling speed of players after level 30 slowed down. After a week, the highest level in the game was only around level 35. Sunset Plateau was Yu Huiqing's level 50 monster area, and it was also where Wang Yu leveled up after level 35. The monsters here were mainly Sunset Rockmen and sparse Gobi Blood Eagles. If someone saw a Grandmaster combat leveling up here, they would definitely be shocked. The Sunset Rockmen had high attack and defense, and the Gobi Blood Eagles were extremely fast. Neither was easy for a Grandmaster of Combat to deal with. Moreover, the highest level of monsters in the main city of the game, other than some specific locations, was level 100. Level 50 was already an intermediate monster. Intermediate monsters not only had strong attributes, but they also had some special skills. They couldn't be compared to low-level monsters below level 50 at all. However, for Wang Yu, the Sunset Rockmen were humanoid monsters of the same level, and they were slow, very suitable for leveling up. As for the Gobi Blood Eagles, there were only a dozen of them in the entire Sunset Plateau. As long as he avoided them, he would be fine. If he couldn't avoid them, he could just kill them. It was a little troublesome, but it wasn't a problem for Wang Yu. Wang Yu cleared the monsters very quickly. The Sunset Rock Golem had 50,000 HP, and its special skill was to use the power of the earth to create a solid stone armor that covered its entire body. Its defense was extremely high. In the game settings, once a monster was covered in stone armor, it would be difficult to ignore the monster's defense, even with a high completion rate in manual mode. The Sunset Rock Golem was supposed to be Wang Yu's biggest headache, but after Wang Yu learned 2 Grandmaster of Combat skills at level 35, this monster was basically a walk in the park. Qi Imbue. A Qigong Grandmaster imbues their Qi into their fists and legs to attack. Special effect: armor penetration. Iron bones. Monks who specialize in external techniques have fists and feet that are as hard as steel. Special effect: attack and defense are increased. Both of them were passive skills. Compared to reinforced iron bones, Qi infusion was not very outstanding. Because Qigong Grandmasters were long-range attackers, they were not good at close combat. Qi infusion could only be effective when their fists and feet touched. As a result, this skill was far inferior to reinforced iron bones, which increased attack and defense. Qigong Grandmaster skills were as bad as ever from level 10 onwards. Players were used to it. After all, in a rare class like Grandmaster Combat, only 2 out of 10 people would choose to be Qigong Grandmasters. In fact, if players could learn both skills, Qigong Grandmaster's effect was not bad. Because of the defense bonus of Iron Bones, it greatly increased the player's survival rate. Moreover, the attack had the effect of armor penetration, which was quite strong. From this point, the hidden class of Grandmaster of Combat was considered to be the first to show its strength. At this time, after Wang Yu skillfully killed the Sunset Rockman, he did not continue to look for the next one. Instead, he leaped back lightly and landed next to a large rock. Then he shouted to the air beside him, "Who are you?" As he shouted, Wang Yu pushed the air beside him, and a thief with blank eyes was pushed out. "I'm talking to you. Why are you acting dumb?" Wang Yu stared at the thief and asked impatiently. This thief was sneaking behind others while they were leveling up. He must be up to no good. Fortunately, Wang Yu had a good temper. If it were someone else, this thief would probably be dead. Of course, this could not be blamed on the player's bad tempers. It was mainly because there were too many such examples in Rebirth. As a class with a stealth skill, the thief was simply more wretched than the other. In the game, there were many cases of players working hard to kill a boss, only to be killed by a passing thief along with their items. Because of this, the game company was pressuring the game company on the forum. Many people were calling for either weakening the stealth skill of the thief or giving other classes anti-stealth skills, and so on. However, the game company turned a deaf ear, which made all those who had been cheated by the thief resentful. What was even more infuriating was that not only did the pressure on the game company have no effect, but the number of thief classes in the game was increasing. Damn it! The thief that Wang Yu pushed out had pointed ears. It seemed to be an elven thief. Elves were born with high agility growth, and were most suitable for the two classes of archer and thief. Most of the thieves on the market today were elven thieves. However, as a new race, the highest level of elven thieves was only level 25. This was a level 50 monster area, and the stealth skill was extremely easy to be seen by the Gobi Blood Eagle with the sharp eyes talent. Since this guy could come here, he was obviously not simple. The elven thief was stunned for a moment and asked Wang Yu, "You're talking to me. Is there someone else here?" Wang Yu asked, "You can see me?" The elven thief was shocked. "Yes." Wang Yu nodded and said, "Why are you standing behind me?" The elven thief scratched his head and said, "I'm lost. I wanted to ask for directions, but seeing that you were so serious, I didn't dare to disturb you." Lost? When Wang Yu heard the elven thief say this, the dissatisfaction in his heart instantly turned into sympathy. It couldn't be helped. Wang Yu was very sympathetic to lost people. "Okay, I'll believe you for now. What's your name?" Wang Yu asked. The elven thief replied, "Lone Wanderer." "Hey, very wuxia." Wang Yu muttered and asked the lone wanderer, "Where are you going? How did you get lost?" Yu Huiqing's terrain was neither a vast forest nor an endless desert, and the terrain was very unique. As long as one didn't have a bad sense of direction, the probability of getting lost was not high. "I'm going to Sunset Peak to do a quest." "Sunset Peak? You? Are you kidding?" Wang Yu said in surprise. Sunset Peak was also a level 50 leveling area, but it was different. Sunset Peak was full of Gobi Blood Eagles, Setting Sun Celestial Eagles, and other monsters. Not only could bird-type monsters fly, but they also had astonishing attack power. They were also born with the innate talent of insight, which was a huge deterrent to squishy classes, especially thieves. Even a great expert like Wang, you didn't want to go there, and this level 20 thief actually wanted to go to Sunset Peak. Wasn't this a joke? No matter how ridiculous the system's quests were, they were still within the player's capabilities. After all, Wang Yu's S-rank class advancement quest only required him to fight level 40 monsters. Chapter 432. Wild Quests, huh? Wang Yu understood immediately after hearing the Lone Wanderer's words. The quests in Rebirth were not only controlled by the NPCs in the city, but there were also many quests from NPCs in the wild. Moreover, the quests from NPCs in the wild were better than those from the NPCs in the city. For example, quests for legendary or epic equipment could only be obtained from NPCs in the wild. Because of this, many players in Rebirth were keen on exploring the map to find these NPCs in the wild. However, although the quests from NPCs in the wild were good, they were not easy to complete. This was because the NPCs would only give out quests after the players had fulfilled the requirements. NPCs in the wild did not have this concern. As long as you dared to ask for a quest, they would give it to you, regardless of your level or strength. To place one's pride was unlucky enough to meet an NPC called Treasure Hunter when doing a weapon quest. That guy dared to ask to place one's pride to steal the treasures of the Dragon Emperor on Dragon Island. To place one's pride had accepted the quest. Not only did the favorability of the dragons decrease, but he also lost a lot of reputation points if he failed the quest. What was even worse was that as long as the quests from NPCs in the wild were not completed, anyone could accept them. This meant that even if the quest item was obtained, the person who completed the quest might not be the one. The designer of Rebirth had always designed the game with the concept of making people die, so it was not unusual for a level 20 thief to complete a quest in a level 50 monster area. Thinking of this, Wang Yu kindly reminded him, Sunset Peak is full of level 50 monsters. You can't do it with your current strength. You should go back. The lone wanderer was disappointed. Ah, I see. Can you help me with the quest? Me? Wang Yu asked incredulously. Aren't you afraid that I'll steal your quest? As there were no restrictions on accepting quests before they were completed, the quest items could be dropped. For example, after Wang Yu killed the lone wanderer and saw the quest item, he could directly go to the NPC that issued the quest to hand in the quest. In the game, no matter how vicious you were, you wouldn't have to face any legal consequences. There were examples of this, so whenever players receive a wild quest, they would look for their closest friends to help them complete the quest. This thief actually asked a stranger to help him complete the quest. Wasn't he a little too bold? Solitary Jianghu Ku said, You are a grandmaster of combat. The reward for my mission is a thief's skill, which you have no use for. You can sell it, Wang Yu said. Don't you know that the rewards of the wild quests are bound? The lone wanderer asked in surprise. Bound items cannot be dropped or traded. Since field quests were unique, the quest rewards were also unique. Completing a field quest was a special achievement, so the quest rewards were bound to the player. The guild treasure that Xuanjin's members had obtained during their last field quest was a bound item. Of course, the quest items were not bound to the player. While it was possible to sell the quest items, players could not see the quest rewards. Naturally, they would not recklessly bid for the quest items. Hence, the restrictions were too great. Wang Yu was an expert who could farm monsters 15 levels higher than him, yet he did not even know this basic setting. It really surprised the lone wanderer. Bound, I think so. Wang Yu thought for a while and said, Little brother, why do you think I will help you? Because you are an expert, and I have money, the lone wanderer said confidently. A person who could farm in a level 50 monster area, even a toenail would know that he was an expert. Wang Yu laughed and said, How much are you willing to pay? 500 gold coins. The lone wanderer said, How about it? Wang Yu heard this and was shocked. He sighed and said, 500 gold coins? You really don't lack money. The standard exchange rate of gold coins to RMB in Rebirth was 100. Since only RMB could be exchanged for gold coins and gold coins could not be exchanged for RMB, the cheapest exchange rate on the trading website was 180. 500 gold coins was 40,000. Nowadays, players who had a few hundred gold coins were already considered middle class. This thief actually spent 500 gold coins to hire someone to help him with the quest. It could be seen that he was indeed rich. No wonder he dared to use money as a word to brag about himself. If you can successfully help me complete the quest, I will give you an additional 200 gold coins, the lone wanderer said again. All right, it's a deal, Wang Yu happily agreed. This is a mercenary contract. The lone wanderer took out a contract and handed it to Wang Yu. Looking at the way he took out the contract, he was quite familiar with it. It seemed like he often paid people to help him with quests. Wang Yu took the contract and looked it over. He clicked confirm, and the contract turned into a white light. At the same time, a shared quest appeared in Wang Yu's quest window. Assassin's secret skill. Go to Sunset Peak and retrieve the dagger left behind by Assassin Leon. Quest rank. A. Quest reward. Rare assassin skill X1. Without considering the level 50 monsters in Sunset Peak, this quest could be considered simple. Although finding a small dagger in the mountains sounded quite scary, everything was much simpler with the coordinates in the game. Wait here, I will go get it for you, Wang Yu said to the lone wanderer after seeing the quest description. The monsters in Sunset Peak were too powerful. It was far easier for Wang Yu to rush up and retrieve the dagger himself than to bring along the burdensome lone wanderer. No, the lone wanderer shook his head, then extended his arm to Wang Yu and said, That dagger has a seal. Only I can pick it up. Wang Yu lowered his head to take a look. As expected, on the arm of the lone traveler, there was a six-pointed star mark. It seemed like the system had also expected that someone would cheat like this. This way, the mission would be much more difficult. After all, it was already too much to deal with the monsters, and he also had to take care of the lone wanderer. No matter how powerful Wang Yu was, he could not take care of everything. This is not easy. When you accepted the quest, did the NPC give you any special tools or something? Wang Yu asked the lone wanderer. For quests like this, the quest NPC would usually give some tools to complete the quest. Even if there were no tools, they would more or less reveal some strategies. The lone wanderer thought for a moment and said, "Tools? No, but the NPC told me that there was a big disaster in Sunset Peak, and he escaped from the back mountain." Back mountain? Yes. The lone wanderer nodded. Okay, then let's go to the back mountain to take a look. In the quest in Rebirth, every sentence from the NPC could be an entry point. Since the assassin deliberately said that he escaped from the back mountain, it could be seen that the key part of this quest was the back mountain. However, Wang Yu had a hunch that this quest was not as simple as it sounded. In addition to the back mountain, there was another key word in the NPC's words, disaster. Chapter 433. Sunset Peak was a mountain on the Sunset Plateau that was next to the Sunset Mountains. It was very close to where Wang Yu was. The monsters on this mountain were very dense. Not to mention the sunset wolves, which lived in groups. Even the birds that didn't live in groups were densely packed. It was very strange. Not long ago, Wang Yu tried to go to Sunset Peak to take a look. In the end, halfway there, he couldn't stand the harassment of the monsters on the road and ran back. The lone wanderer was only a level 25 thief. Even if he had trained his stealth to the level of famed sword Dao Shua, he would still be seen through by flying beasts like the setting sun condor. The only reason why the lone wanderer was able to reach the setting sun plateau was because there weren't many flying beasts there. If he had reached the setting sun peak, he would have definitely died. After a short while, Wang Yu and the lone wanderer arrived at the foot of Sunset Peak. Looking around, the layer of monsters at the foot of the mountain made the lone wanderer's heart jump. F***CK, what's going on here? In Rebirth, the monsters spawned at a normal density of 3 monsters within a 10-meter radius. At the foot of Sunset Peak, there were at least 10 monsters within a 10-meter radius. The density was more than 3 times that of a normal monster area. The lone wanderer had reached level 25 and ran all over the map, but he had never seen a place with so many monsters. As he said this, the lone wanderer activated stealth. Although he knew that stealth was useless in the eyes of these birds, he felt more at ease using stealth. This is just the beginning. The higher we go, the denser the monsters get. When we reached the waist of the mountain, there were a lot of them. TSK. Wang Yu said with lingering fear. You've been up the mountain before? Hearing Wang Yu say this, the lone wanderer was slightly stunned. Normal players wouldn't be able to survive if they were surrounded by monsters of the same level. The monsters here were all level 50, and they were the hardest to deal with. Wang Yu was actually able to pass through the monster area and climb up the mountain. This was a bit too strong. I've been up, but I was only halfway there. There were too many monsters, and it was annoying. Were you surrounded and killed? No, I ran away. Wang Yu said. You're awesome. The lone wanderer exclaimed. Where is the back mountain? The lone traveler asked again. Wang Yu shook his head and said, I don't know either. Let's split up and look for it. Stay away from the monster area and don't get surrounded. Yes. The lone traveler of the martial world answered and walked to the 2 sides with Wang Yu. Soon, Wang Yu received a message from the lone wanderer. There's a small path here, and there are many monsters at the intersection. Don't move. Wait for me. After receiving the message, Wang Yu ran to the coordinates of the lone wanderer. The location mentioned by the lone traveler was a cliff. Above the cliff was a narrow suspension bridge that connected the Sunset Plateau and the Sunset Peak. On the other side of the drawbridge, there was a small path that led straight to the back of Sunset Peak. When Wang Yu arrived at the suspension bridge, the lone traveler was hiding behind a tree. There were at least 20 large birds circling around the bridge, which was less than 20 meters long. Setting Sun Divine Eagle, LV 50, HP, 10,000 MP, 2,000 skills. Eagle soars the sky, wing dive. Talent, sharp eyes, can see stealth units. Seeing Wang Yu come over, the lone wanderer said to Wang Yu, "I thought of a good strategy." Wang Yu was slightly stunned. "What strategy?" The lone wanderer said, "You lure those monsters away, I'll cross the bridge first." It had to be said that this kid was very smart. He even knew how to lure the tiger away from the mountain. Who knew that, Wang Yu would say in disdain. "What kind of lousy strategy is this? Don't worry, I'll give you money even if you die. How about I give you money first?" The lone wanderer thought that Wang Yu was worried that he wouldn't get the commission after he died, so he quickly persuaded him. Wang Yu smiled. "Just kill these monsters directly. It'll be troublesome if we lure them away." "Kill them directly? Are you kidding me?" When the lone wanderer heard that, he anxiously said, "These are 20 level 50 monsters." It was true that Wang Yu had said that she had gone up the mountain before. Putting aside the truth of this matter, passing through a monster zone and killing a monster zone were two completely different concepts. All right? Wang Yu didn't explain. He smiled faintly and walked toward the drawbridge. The lone wanderer was shocked. F*CK. "If you don't listen to me, I won't give you money if you die." Before the lone wanderer finished speaking, Wang Yu had already walked into the Setting Sun Divine Eagle's aggro range. With such a high density of monsters, the Setting Sun Divine Eagle's aggro range was definitely chain mines. The moment Wang Yu stepped into the monster zone, a red exclamation mark appeared on the heads of the 20 Setting Sun Divine Eagles within the range of the drawbridge. Then, they all swooped down toward Wang Yu. Bang! 21-22, the remnant elephant exploded in the midst of the 20 Setting Sun Condor Eagles. The Setting Sun Condor Eagles within range lost a large chunk of their HP. The stun from the explosion also froze the Setting Sun Condor Eagles in place. At this moment, Wang Yu suddenly appeared in the air and landed with a thunderstomp. 62-14, the blue lightning brought with it a bright red number. On the spot, 4 or 5 Setting Sun Divine Eagles were killed. Most of the remaining Setting Sun Divine Eagles were left with low HP. The low HP Setting Sun Divine Eagle cried out in pain. It flapped its wings and shot into the sky. Wang Yu calmly leaped into the air with the Setting Sun Divine Eagle and activated Whirlwind Kick. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 kicks of Whirlwind Kick killed all the Setting Sun Divine Eagles within Wang Yu's attack range. Only 3 managed to escape. Wang Yu took out the Fire Dragon Magic Gun in midair and fired 3 shots. The 20 Setting Sun Divine Eagles were all killed in less than 10 seconds. The solo player who witnessed this was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Although the solo player was a bit of a noob compared to Wang Yu, he wasn't a weakling since he dared to come to a level 50 monster area to do a quest at around level 25. At the very least, he had some foresight. If a normal player saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked at Wang Yu's farming efficiency. They would sigh at how amazing Wang Yu was. As for why he was amazing, apart from his high damage, there was no other explanation. However, the solo player was very clear. The hardest part of Wang Yu's set of movements was the afterimage at the beginning. Because stealth units were ineffective against Setting Sun Divine Eagles, Wang Yu's afterimage couldn't hide from the Setting Sun Divine Eagles. However, Wang Yu's afterimage exploded and hit all of the Setting Sun Divine Eagles. As for why this happened, the only explanation was that the instant the Setting Sun Divine Eagle hit Wang Yu, he activated his afterimage and jumped into the air. What incredible reaction speed! What incredible confidence! Could he be a first-rate god in the professional circle? Could he have spent 500 gold to find a first-rate god to do a quest for him? Thinking of this, the solo player felt that he had struck gold this time. Chapter 434. Let's go. After killing the monsters, Wang Yu waved at the lone wanderer behind the tree. The lone wanderer walked over excitedly and asked, "Nyogo, which team are you in?" "Team? I don't have a team." Wang Yu replied calmly. "No team?" The lone wanderer was surprised and asked, You're also an unspecialized. The so-called unspecialized referred to the lone wanderer in the game. They didn't have a guild or a fixed team. They were the kind of people who traveled alone. Even in dungeons, they would join a random team. Unspecialized players belonged to a very extreme group. They were either as weak as dogs or as powerful as gods. Because unspecialized players did everything alone. Rebirth was a game that emphasized teamwork. Without a fixed team, unspecialized players were destined to be unable to clear high-level dungeons or complete hidden quests. Therefore, 99% of unspecialized players were the lowest of noobs. The more noobs they were, the less friends they had, and the less friends they had, the more noobs they were. Of course, there was another kind of exception, and that was the rich. Unspecialized players spent most of their time farming wild monsters to level up. The chances of encountering wild quests were relatively high. Normally, unspecialized players would weigh their abilities when encountering hidden quests and consider whether or not to accept them. Rich people had no such worries. As long as they had money, they could hire many people to help them complete quests. In the end, they could enjoy the quest rewards alone. Over time, these unspecialized players would become stronger and stronger. In the later stages of the game, they would become terrifying existences that even professional players wouldn't want to provoke. The Lone Wanderer was the latter type of unspecialized player. Now that he heard that Wang Yu didn't have a team, he naturally treated Wang Yu as one of them. Unspecialized player? I guess so. Wang Yu didn't really understand what an unspecialized player was, but it wasn't hard to understand from the literal meaning. It was the kind that trained alone. No wonder. I really misjudged him. The Lone Wanderer muttered to himself. Wang Yu scratched the back of his head in confusion. Then he said, "Let's go, or else the monsters will respawn again." After crossing the suspension bridge, the system notified the two that they had discovered the back mountain. The back mountain of Sunset Peak and the front mountain were two completely different worlds. The map of the back mountain was a narrow path with messy rocks and not a single monster. Following the path, the two of them spiraled upwards. After walking for about 14 or 15 minutes, they finally reached the end of the path. At the end of the road was a precipitous cliff. It was smooth and very steep, about 100 meters high. Vines hung down from the cliff, and one of the thickest vines directly reached the ground. "This should be the path to the back of the mountain. Looks like we need to climb up," the Lone Wanderer mumbled and asked Wang Yu, "Nyogu, have you learned any climbing skills?" Climbing was an innate skill of the thief class, but other classes could also learn it through rare skill books. Wang Yu shook his head and said no. Lone Wanderer took out a skill book from his bag and tossed it to Wang Yu, saying, "Here, it just so happens that I bought an extra book." Huh. Wang Yu glanced at the Lone Wanderer in surprise. Climb was a very practical skill. Its price was not cheap, either. Each skill book cost at least 50 gold coins. This fellow was even gifting a skill book to her, just for helping her with a quest. How generous. Since Lone Wanderer took the initiative to give it, Wang Yu naturally didn't refuse. After receiving the skill book, Wang Yu conveniently stuffed it into his bag. If you don't learn a skill, you won't be able to climb up this mountain. Lone Wanderer saw that Wang Yu hadn't learned any skills, so he reminded him. Wang Yu smiled and said, "Don't worry about me. You go up first, I have my ways." "Really? Don't trick me." Lone Wanderer looked at Wang Yu strangely. He grabbed onto the vines with both arms and began to wriggle up like a worm. Seeing Lone Wanderer's clumsy movements, Wang Yu sighed inwardly. "Fortunately, I have the system skills. Otherwise, it would be difficult for me to even move my arms." Although Lone Wanderer's movements were ugly, his movement speed was average. Before long, Lone Wanderer had climbed nearly 20 meters. Then, he turned his head to see if Wang Yu was following him. When he turned his head, the Lone Wanderer was so frightened that he fell off the vines. He saw Wang Yu holding a sword in each hand. His left hand stabbed the sword into the stone wall, and then he leaped onto the sword hilt. His right hand stabbed into the stone wall again, and he flipped up. At the same time, he waved his left hand, and a white gas pulled the sword back. This repeated a few times until he was less than 2 meters away from Lone Wanderer. Although Wang Yu's method of climbing the mountain wasn't very safe, It was much faster and more aesthetically pleasing than climbing while holding onto the vines. Lone Wanderer was completely speechless. He didn't think that the game could be played this way. Nyogu, be careful. There are monsters at the top of the mountain. Seeing Wang Yu quickly climb over his head, Lone Wanderer shouted from behind. Wang Yu said as he climbed, I understand. I'll clear the path for you first. A height of 100 meters was nothing to Wang Yu. Very quickly, Wang Yu reached the edge of the mountain. However, as soon as Wang Yu peeked out, a huge spiked hammer suddenly fell on his head. Wang Yu was shocked. He activated Image Remnant and rolled to the top of the mountain. Looking closely, he saw two big guys with long tails smashing his Image Remnant with hammers. Sunset Mountain Demon, LV50, Elite, HP, 100000 MP, 10,000 skills. Sunset Bash, Sunset Screech Talent. Destroy Wang Yu secretly wiped the sweat off his forehead. F***CK. Couldn't this game designer be more shameless? Setting up two of these things at this position, wasn't it obvious that he was trying to bring disaster to the players? It was fortunate that Wang Yu had climbed up first. If the Lone Wanderer had climbed up first, with the elf thief's small physique, he would have been smashed into smithereens by these two fellows. Bang! Wang Yu's Image Remnant was smashed by one of the mountain demons. The other mountain demon's hammer smashed into the vines, and the thick vines were smashed into juices. Lone Wanderer's shout came from the bottom of the mountain. Damn, that scared the hell out of me. The vines are 70% destroyed. Nyogu, don't let the monsters attack the vines anymore. Only then did Wang Yu understand that the two mountain demons' talent was destroy. It probably meant that they could destroy the terrain. Sceneries in the game were always invincible. Even a mage's ultimate skill couldn't leave a scratch on the sceneries. These two could actually destroy sceneries. What a domineering skill. At this time, the two mountain demons realized that their target was Image Remnant. One of the mountain demons roared and swung its hammer at Wang Yu. Chapter 435. Wang Yu tried his best to dodge, but his legs wouldn't listen to him. He could only watch as the mountain demon's hammer came crashing down. F***CK, this stupid monster. Wang Yu cursed in his heart. He switched his boxing glove to a long stick and blocked the mountain demon's hammer. 245 Wang Yu was sent flying by the hammer. At the same time, a system notification popped up. Your weapon has been destroyed, 20% damaged. F***CK. Wang Yu immediately panicked. Wu Yu's Sai was Wang Yu's favorite, and it was destroyed by 20% in just one round. How could he still fight? Seeing the mountain demon charging at him again, Wang Yu didn't dare to fight it head-on. He rolled to the side. At that moment, the voice of the lone traveler came again. Nyogu, the vines are about to break. Don't let the mountain demon smash them again. When Wang Yu heard this, he raised his head and saw another mountain demon raising a giant hammer and using all his strength to smash the vines. The thick vines had already been smashed into smithereens. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu rushed over with a collapsing fist and kicked at the mountain demon. The mountain demon that was swinging its hammer with its but in the air was kicked by Wang Yu. It grunted and fell down the cliff. Bang! The sound of a free fall came from the bottom of the mountain. The poor mountain demon fell to its death. Nyogu is really ruthless, the lone traveler said sincerely. Wang Yu didn't bother with this kid because the mountain demon had run over with its hammer again. Wang Yu focused his attention on the mountain demon's weapon. The mountain demon rushed in front of Wang Yu and raised its hammer high. Wang Yu smiled and appeared behind the mountain demon. He stretched out his arms and pushed the big guy down. That's right, it was pushing. The mountain demon's attack power wasn't that great, but it was extremely destructive to equipment. Wang Yu was so afraid of this bear that he decided to use his hooligan moves. After dealing with the mountain demon, Wang Yu took out a rope and went down. He shouted to the lone traveler, "Grab the rope, I'll pull you up." The vines were already on the verge of collapsing. Putting aside the question of how long they could last, with the speed of the lone wanderer, the mountain demons who had climbed up the mountain would have already killed a few waves. Wang Yu was not confident that he could stop the mountain demons that were wreaking havoc everywhere. The lone wanderer did not say anything. He let go of the vines and grabbed the rope. Wang Yu, who was on the cliff, pulled him up in a few moves. At the edge of the cliff, there seemed to be only these two monsters. The lone traveler pointed to a place not far away and said, "The dagger is over there." What? Wang Yu opened up the map and looked at the coordinates. As expected, the coordinates were right on the edge of the cliff. Then, Wang Yu followed the direction the lone wanderer pointed and walked a few steps forward along the cliff. He discovered a dark purple mass. He could faintly see a dagger stuck in the ground. "You have good eyesight," Wang Yu said in surprise. Thieves only had night vision. The lighting on the mountaintop was very good, so the lone wanderer's field of vision was about the same as Wang Yu's. However, Wang Yu was used to being here for many years, so his vision was more focused. Therefore, compared to normal players, it was easier for him to notice some details. However, the lone wanderer actually noticed the dagger that Wang Yu didn't see. This was a bit surprising to Wang Yu. Ugh! The lone wanderer's expression changed slightly. He quickly said, "It's a coincidence, oh." Wang Yu knew that some special items could increase one's vision. Looking at the lone wanderer's expression, it seemed that he did not want to talk about it. Therefore, Wang Yu did not pursue the matter. Instead, he urged, "Hurry up and pull out the dagger. I still need to level up." "Okay." The lone wanderer replied and reached his hand into the black fog. As soon as his arm touched the black fog, the hexagram on his arm lit up. Then, the black fog gradually dissipated. After the black fog dissipated, Wang Yu discovered that the place where the dagger was searching was a strange magic circle. There were traces of cracks on a magic circle where the dagger was inserted. Wisps of black smoke floated out of the cracks and floated towards the front of the sunset peak. "Bro, will you be okay if you pull out the dagger?" Wang Yu asked worriedly. Hearing Wang Yu's words, the lone wanderer gave Wang Yu a strange look. "Bro, this is a game. What does it have to do with us if something happens?" According to a normal player's thinking, it would be fine as long as they followed the system's instructions to complete the quest. Who would think about what would happen next? Wang Yu is a complete noob in the game. His mind could not change so quickly. It was no wonder that he would be looked down upon by others for asking such a question. "Ugh," Wang Yu said awkwardly. "All right, continue." The lone wanderer lowered his head. He grabbed the dagger by the hilt and pulled it out. After the dagger was pulled out, the magic array beneath the dagger began to crack. In the end, the magic array shattered, revealing a small, black box. Seeing the small black box, the lone wanderer threw the dagger into his bag and reached out to grab the box. At that moment, Wang Yu suddenly shouted, "Get down! There's someone behind you." As soon as Wang Yu finished speaking, the lone wanderer hurriedly got down on the ground. At the same time, a tall and thin masked assassin appeared behind the lone wanderer. The assassin raised his dagger and was about to stab him in the back. Lone Ranger lay on the ground and avoided being hit in his vitals. When the assassin saw that he didn't kill his opponent in one hit, he reached out to grab the black box. System notification: your party has been attacked by one-page book. You have 180 seconds to defend yourself. A PK notification? It's a player. As Wang Yusue spoke, he dashed forward and swung his fist at the guy named One Page Book. One Page Book moved as if he had eyes on the back of his head. He blocked the attack with his dagger. This dagger was very exquisite. It just happened to block Wang Yu's fist. Wang Yu was surprised. His right hand gripped Tiger Claw and grabbed One Page Book's wrist. His left hand formed the shape of a crane's beak, and he stabbed at One Page Book's back. One Page Book's right hand also formed the shape of a crane's beak. He pulled back and broke free from Wang Yu's grasp. At the same time, he flipped forward and was forced back several meters. Wang Yu took the opportunity to wave his left hand and used the cloud-capturing hand to grab the black box. One Page Book's face was covered, so Wang Yu couldn't see his expression. However, his eyes were filled with surprise. "How did you get left crane headbutt?" A clear voice came from the direction of the assassin. Wang Yu and the lone traveler were both stunned. They took another look at the chest of the assassin, then looked at each other in disbelief. They said in unison, "It's actually a woman?" That's impossible. Umph. One-page book coldly snorted. He activated quickness and charged at Wang Yu with his dagger in hand. Wang Yu took a step back and leaned to the side. He grabbed One-Page Book's arm with his left hand and lifted One-Page Book's chin with his right. Then, he threw him off the cliff. Chapter 436. Seeing this scene, the lone wanderer's hair stood on end. CKUU, you threw her down? The lone wanderer pointed at Wang Yu and asked. Seeing the lone wanderer's reaction, Wang Yu asked, Isn't she an enemy? Is there something wrong with throwing her down? In Wang Yu's eyes, there wasn't much difference between throwing someone down a cliff and being beaten to death with his fists. She's a girl, the lone wanderer exclaimed. Wang Yu said, I know. It's because she's a girl that I didn't beat her to death. Do you like to see me beat up girls that much? Huh? After being defended by Wang Yu, the lone wanderer felt that Wang Yu's words made sense. He was speechless, but then he thought about it. What was going on? How could falling to death and being beaten to death be the same? In the game, even if you were stabbed to death with a knife, it was just a matter of one stab. Throwing someone down a mountain to their death required a process. Falling from such a high place and landing on the ground before dying, this feeling was definitely more satisfying than bungee jumping with your rope off. In any case, after Wang Yu climbed up the cliff, he threw 2 monsters and a player down. In the eyes of the lone wanderer, this kind of behavior was completely insane. The lone wanderer subconsciously took 2 steps away from Wang Yu. Wang Yu had just thrown 3 people down. Perhaps he was addicted to throwing himself down. Seeing the lone wanderer's complicated expression, Wang Yu smiled and ignored him. At this moment, Wang Yu suddenly received a system notification. System notification: the sealed dagger has been moved. The dark altar has been opened. You have received the mandatory quest, the altar on the mountain peak. Quest rank S. Current segment, demonic energy overflow. Show the heart of darkness to the trainer. He will guide you on the next step. Quest notification: the overflow of demonic energy has caused the Sunset Peak monsters to become abnormal. Currently, the demonized monsters have lost the support of the Heart of Darkness and are surrounding the peak. Players, please leave quickly. Note: the Heart of Darkness is the source of darkness. Due to player accidentally breaking the seal, the altar has reappeared. You must do everything in your power to remedy the situation. If the quest fails or the Heart of Death drops, player level -5, Yu Huiqing honor points -1000. After the system notification, the name of the small black box in Wang Yu's bag changed to Heart of Darkness. There was a small line of words at the bottom. 100% drop upon death. Motherf *cur. What a scam. After reading the quest notification, Wang Yu felt bitter in his heart. If he'd known that this thing's setting was so despicable, he would have let Yu take it away. Now, the system was determined to screw him over. At the same time, Wang Yu heard a commotion not far away. Looking over, she saw a group of monsters rushing up from the foot of the mountain. The setting sun celestial eagles and goby blood eagles at the front were like locusts covering the sky. Wang Yu frowned and took out the bundle of rope. It was actually the flying dragon rope. Because he couldn't recast it, he could only use it as a rope. Quick, tie the rope to yourself. We have to go down quickly, Wang Yu said anxiously to the lone traveler. The lone traveler said, Why are you in such a hurry? All right, where's the small box? Give it to me. Seeing the monsters getting closer, Wang Yu pointed down the mountain and interrupted the lone traveler. Don't you see the monsters over there? The lone traveler looked back and was shocked. What's going on? Wang Yu said, You pulled out your dagger and caused trouble. Quick, I'll throw you down. At the same time, Wang Yu was puzzled. Did this guy not receive the quest notification? When the lone traveler heard that Wang Yu was going to throw him down, his face turned ashen. He hurriedly said, There are vines, I'll just climb down. Then you'll be bitten to death by the monsters. As he said this, Wang Yu tied the rope around the lone traveler's body. He then grabbed the lone traveler's collar and threw him down. Iron oxide. The lone traveler cried out in pain as he fell down. Wang Yu's rope was only 30 meters long. It was only a third of the height of the cliff. After throwing the lone traveler down, Wang Yu also jumped down. When the lone traveler was a few meters above the ground, Wang Yu stabbed his sword into the mountain wall. The two of them stopped and hung on the cliff. At this time, the monsters at the top of the mountain had already flown to the edge of the cliff. Wang Yu loosened her grip and let go of the rope, allowing the lone wanderer to fall. Then, Wang Yu sheathed her sword and jumped down. When she was still a few meters away from the ground, she used night jump and landed beside the lone wanderer. At this time, the lone traveler was lying on the ground. His breathing was weak and his face was purple. Go, go, Wang Yu urged. Scram. The lone traveler held his throat and roared. It was obvious that he was terrified. Wang Yu said in disdain, No way, just a few meters and you're already like this? In the system settings, a person would only die if they fell from a height of 20 meters. A few meters would at most cause them to lose a bit of health. Seeing the lone traveler like this, if he didn't turn into a white light, Wang Yu would have thought that he was dead. The lone traveler said angrily, Do you know how to play with ropes? Of course I do. I'm proficient in all kinds of martial arts. Wang Yu said shamelessly. Then who taught you to tie ropes? The lone traveler was about to go crazy. Wang Yu's rope had almost strangled him to death. This made the lone wanderer deeply understand that in the game, being hacked to death with a sword was the most satisfying way to die. Wang Yu's face turned red as he explained, You don't understand. In martial arts, tying ropes is a killing technique. This is my first time saving someone. Actually, other than tying shoelaces, Wang Yu only knew how to tie ropes. Oof. The lone traveler, who had already climbed up from the ground, snorted and didn't say anything. As the two of them spoke, the densely packed bird monsters circled around the top of the mountain before diving down. Wang Yu and the lone traveler were shocked and immediately retreated. However, no matter how fast they ran, they couldn't outrun those with wings. Where can we run? Seeing so many bird monsters, the lone traveler was in despair. The lone traveler was a thief. If it were any other monster, even if the lone traveler couldn't outrun them, he could still use stealth to avoid them. However, the sky full of bird monsters had insight. Where could he run? In the next moment, the bird monsters had already flown behind the two of them. When Wang Yu saw such a dense group of monsters, he couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb. If he ran, he definitely wouldn't be able to outrun them. If he died, it was even more impossible. Let's not talk about how difficult it was to go from level 30 to level 35. Just these 1,000 honor points were enough for Wang Yu to turn from a hero to a heinous criminal. Chapter 437. Thinking of this, Wang Yu asked the lone wanderer, Bro, do you want to fall to your death or be bitten to death by the monsters? I don't want to. The lone wanderer answered honestly. Then I'm sorry. As Wang Yu spoke, he punched the lone wanderer's head. The lone wanderer was smashed into white light, and the quest dagger fell to the ground. The lone wanderer blinked and appeared at the resurrection point. After 3 seconds of confusion, the lone wanderer flew into a rage. F***CK. Why did this be **starred kill me? At this moment, the lone wanderer received a message from Wang Yu. Wait for me at the resurrection point. After killing the lone Jianghu man, the bird monsters chasing after Wang Yu had already blocked the entire narrow mountain road. The sky was also densely packed with them. Wang Yu glanced at the bird monsters and pounced forward, jumping off the cliff. This cliff was the canyon with the drawbridge. Looking down, it was impossible to see the bottom. In this kind of terrain, unless it was a mage-type player who had learned flying spells like Featherfall, other classes would basically die if they jumped. Of course, players like Wang Yu who had teleportation skills could also try, but whether they had the courage and reflexes to do so was another matter. In fact, this cliff was only 10 meters wide. With Wang Yu's ability, jumping to the other side was no problem at all. However, these bird monsters could fly, so jumping to the other side was no different from not jumping at all. Jumping down was different. These setting sun celestial eagles and Gobi blood eagles have been demonized. Their bodies were much larger than those on the Sunset Plateau at the foot of the mountain. Their wingspans were 4 to 5 meters wide. Birds of prey like eagles needed space to dive. The canyon was only 10 meters wide, so they could not even hover. If the system was really shameless enough to give these bird monsters the ability to fly like a helicopter, Wang Yu would have to accept his fate. Fortunately, no matter how shameless the system was, it was not shameless to this extent. After Wang Yu jumped off the cliff, the bird monsters lost their target. They circled around in the sky for a while before flying back to the top of the mountain. At this time, Wang Yu, who had fallen down the cliff, received the system notification that the monsters had retreated. Wang Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Damn it, this quest was simply inhumane. There were so many flying monsters chasing after players. Moreover, the penalty for failure was so severe. Wasn't this just forcing players onto the path of death? Fortunately, it was Wang Yu who accepted the mission this time. If it were anyone else who accepted this mission, they would probably die. Even a mage with the ability to fly would have a hard time jumping off the cliff when surrounded by so many flying monsters. After all, a mage with the ability to fly with the Featherfall spell would not only be able to float, but their movement speed was also quite impressive. Springsir was a good example of this. When he was being chased, he would not use the ability to fly until he reached the bottom of the wall, as he was afraid of being shot down by the enemy. The scenery at the bottom of the cliff was horrible. There were bones everywhere. From the system's notification, Wang Yu knew that this map was called Boneyard. Seeing the ground full of bones, Wang Yu was afraid that the system would do something again. Without another word, he turned around and ran out. He only relaxed when he ran to the familiar map of the Sunset Mountains. Half an hour later, Wang Yu finally returned to Yu Huicheng. The lone wanderer had been waiting for a long time. What took you so long? Where's the dagger? The wanderer asked impatiently. He was killed for no reason. No one would be happy. Wang Yu took out the dagger and said, I had to get rid of those monsters. Get rid of those monsters? The wanderer was stunned when he heard this. After a while, the wanderer asked in disbelief, You said you got rid of those bird monsters? How did you do it? At that time, the situation was urgent. The wanderer didn't have time to count how many monsters there were in the sky. However, there were at least 1,000 birds that covered the sky. There were so many bird monsters, and they could fly. Although flying monsters weren't the most powerful, they were always the most difficult to deal with. With thousands of bird monsters chasing him, the wanderer thought that Wang Yu had been killed. Who knew that Wang Yu had survived? This guy's ability to escape was terrifying. Wang Yu said truthfully, I jumped off the cliff. They couldn't fly down, oh. The wanderer did remember that Wang Yu had asked him how he wanted to die. It turned out that Wang Yu had already thought of jumping off the cliff. The wanderer had seen Wang Yu's rock climbing skills and knew that jumping off the cliff would give Wang Yu a higher chance of survival. Even so, the wanderer still felt that Wang Yu was too strange. He didn't play by the rules. It was as if the system's rules didn't work on him. What about the Heart of Darkness? Give it to me too. The lone traveler looked at Wang Yu in surprise and said, Heart of Darkness? Wang Yu asked, Didn't you only want the dagger? For this Heart of Darkness, Wang Yu was forced to jump off the cliff by the monster. How could he give it to him so easily? The wanderer said, The Heart of Darkness is also my quest item. Wang Yu said, Our contract quest didn't say anything about the Heart of Darkness. Right? How do you know that thing is called the Heart of Darkness? Wang Yu wasn't a fool. If the wanderer didn't say anything about the Heart of Darkness, it would be fine. Once the wanderer mentioned the Heart of Darkness, Wang Yu immediately reacted. This thing was picked up by him, and the name was only shown after he received the quest. The wanderer didn't seem to have received the quest, so how did he know the name of the Heart of Darkness? Thinking about the wanderer's sudden appearance and his familiarity with the back mountain, Wang Yu suddenly felt that he had been tricked by this brat. Wang Yu's guess was correct. The wanderer's main goal was the Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness was a non-hidden quest that assassins could learn from assassin mentors after reaching level 25. Due to the complexity of this quest, it was impossible to complete at this stage of the game. Moreover, the penalty for failing the quest was very high, and the rewards were unknown. So, even an expert assassin like Baiming Yu couldn't help but feel powerless. The first part of the Heart of Darkness quest was to find the assassin who sealed the Heart of Darkness and break the seal on the dagger. Just this quest alone was enough to stump a lot of people. The Wanderer accidentally bumped into this NPC. After receiving the dagger quest, he found out that this NPC was the quest NPC for the Heart of Darkness. Actually, when the Wanderer first found Wang Yu, he didn't think about the Heart of Darkness. He only wanted Wang Yu to lure away the monster on the drawbridge, and then he could remove the dagger himself. Who would have thought that Wang Yu was so strong? And he was also a solo player. So, the Wanderer wanted to obtain the Heart of Darkness. Chapter 438. This is an assassin's quest item. You won't be able to use it. I can pay for it. Name your price. The Lone Wanderer hesitated for a moment before speaking to Wang Yu. The Lone Wanderer didn't know that Wang Yu had received a quest. Seeing that Wang Yu wasn't willing to hand over the Heart of Darkness, he thought that Wang Yu felt that the quest was too risky and the reward was too low. The Lone Wanderer didn't lack money, so he wasn't afraid of Wang Yu asking for an exorbitant price. He directly asked Wang Yu to name his price. Wang Yu displayed the quest item with a pained expression and said gloomily, "Do you think I want this thing?" Wang Yu not only felt pain that he had been scammed by the system, but also that he had lost a chance to earn money. F***CK. When the Lone Wanderer saw Wang Yu's quest introduction, his scalp went numb. Losing the quest item was considered a quest failure. Failure penalty was -5 levels and -1,000 honor points. How is this a F***king quest? It was simply a huge scam. Even if the Lone Wanderer dared to do this quest, Wang Yu probably wouldn't be willing to sell it. Not to mention how hard it was to level up by 5 levels. 1,000 honor points wasn't something money could buy. Moreover, no matter how rich the Lone Wanderer was, he wouldn't spend it on a quest with unknown rewards. Nyoga, my condolences. The Lone Wanderer patted Wang Yu's shoulder as he consoled him. The first round of the quest was already this scam. Who knew what the later quests would be like? The Lone Wanderer was more glad that he didn't go for the Heart of Darkness first. Wang Yu sighed and said, "You got the dagger. You don't need me to follow you to turn the quest, right?" "That won't be necessary," the Lone Wanderer said. The thief was a profession that could go into stealth. In this era where there were no anti-stealth skills, the thief profession wasn't afraid of being chased. "All right, then you go. I'll go turn in the Heart of Darkness first," Wang Yu said helplessly. "You really plan on doing this mission?" The Lone Wanderer was shocked. The Heart of Darkness quest was not something that could be accepted at this stage of the game. The quest also did not have a time limit. According to the loner's train of thought, he should at least wait until his level was higher before considering it. Who knew that Wang Yu would want to do it now? "But I can't bring this with me every day." Wang Yu was helpless. There were dangers everywhere in the game, and no one could guarantee immortality. Wang Yu didn't have that confidence either. If he died one day, wouldn't it be a huge loss? "You can store it in the warehouse, right?" the lone traveler suggested. "I can't." Wang Yu wanted to cry. If he could just throw it into the warehouse, he wouldn't be so depressed. When the lone traveler heard this, he said gloatingly, "TSK, then I can't help you." Wang Yu really didn't want to pay attention to this guy who was watching him make a fool of himself. He minded his own business and walked towards the alley where Hermit was. The lone traveler followed closely behind Wang Yu without saying a word. When they reached the alley, Wang Yu suddenly turned around and asked the lone traveler, "Why haven't you turned in the quest yet?" "There's no rush to turn in the quest. I'm very curious about what your next quest will be," the lone traveler said with a smile. Wang Yu said, "You can't help." The first round of the quest was already this difficult. Even Wang Yu felt that it was a little tricky. What could a level 25 thief like the lone traveler do? "You're thinking too much. I just want to see how unlucky you are," the lone traveler said with a smile. Other than running around the map, the lone traveler's biggest hobby was to watch the fun. Wang Yu was furious. "Damn you." After walking into the alley, Wang Yu woke up Hermit and handed him the Heart of Darkness. He then asked respectfully, "Teacher, I accidentally obtained this item. May I ask what it is?" After seeing the Heart of Darkness, Old Man Hermit's usually sleepy face suddenly became serious. Where Where did you get this from? Old Man Hermit asked in surprise. On Sunset Peak, Wang Yu said truthfully. Who would have thought that this heart of darkness would see the light of day again? The hermit sighed and said, This is the heart of the sixth apostle. Back then, I sealed it and gave it to the Thieves' Guild. In the end, an expert from the Thieves' Guild coveted the power of darkness and stole it. Since then, this heart of darkness has disappeared without a trace. I didn't expect it to be in Sunset City. Then what should I do with this heart of darkness now? The heart of darkness has an immeasurable power of darkness. This power can demonize monsters outside the city, making them violent and powerful. If it is placed inside the city, it will also demonize the citizens. The best way is to seal it again. How can I seal it? One you continue to ask. The setting sun roulette that sealed this heart of darkness has also been stolen. If I want to seal this heart of darkness, I'll need to find the assassin who stole this heart of darkness back then. Leon. System notification. Quest change to the second part of the altar at the top of the mountain. Wanted assassin. Quest rank S. Find the assassin who stole the heart of darkness, Leon, and find the whereabouts of the sunset roulette. Assassin Leon? After receiving the quest, Wang Yu's heart trembled. At the same time, he thought of his own contract quest. So the person who sent the solitary traveler to retrieve the dagger was the person who stole the heart of darkness. The solitary traveler wasn't surprised when he heard Hermit's words. After all, Leon was the target of the first part of the Thief Guild's Heart of Darkness quest. However, he didn't expect the assassin, Leon, to be someone who coveted the power of darkness. After walking out of the alley, the solitary traveler asked Wang Yu, Our quest NPC is the same person. We won't have the same quest, right? After walking out of the alley, the solitary traveler asked Wang Yu, We probably won't have the same quest, but you will have a part in it. Although the Heart of Darkness was in Wang Yu's hands, the dagger that sealed the Heart of Darkness was pulled out by the solitary traveler. At the very least, he was an accomplice when the solitary traveler heard this. He was shocked. Don't mess around. I'm not doing the same quest as you. In Rebirth, the quest rank and reward were directly linked. Although the S-rank quest was quite tempting, the solitary traveler wasn't interested in this quest at all. Wang Yu laughed and didn't explain. It seemed that the solitary traveler was used to paying people to do quests. He didn't know much about the deceptive tricks of the game's NPCs. The Sunset Wilderness was a level 30 monster area in the west of Yuhuicheng City. There were many beast-type monsters like the Sunset Cheetah and the Sunset Tiger. These monsters were very fast and had very low HP. They were the favorite of warriors. Wang Yu hadn't been here many times before. The wilderness was filled with warrior players who were around level 25 in groups of 2s and 3s. The lone wanderer led Wang Yu through many twists and turns before they arrived at a very remote corner in the depths of the wilderness. Chapter 439. The map of Rebirth was huge. Finding an NPC in 300 main cities was like looking for a needle in a haystack, not to mention a thief hiding in such a remote place. It was no wonder that no one dared to accept an S-rank quest. After seeing Assassin Leon, the Lone Ranger took out a dagger and handed it over. This is the dagger you wanted. Put it there. Leon raised his head and looked at the Lone Ranger, indicating for him to throw the dagger aside. He then took out a skill book and handed it to the Lone Ranger. At the same time, the contract quest was completed. Wang Yu's bag had an extra 500 gold coins. Second jump, rare skill. Class requirement, assassin. Although other classes, aside from pugilist classes, did not have a bonus to their attack power when using jumping skills were still very useful for players of any class. Hence, equipment that increased jumping skills were very valuable. Even a jumping skill like second jump was worth far more than 500 gold. It seemed that Lone Wanderer had not suffered a loss in this quest. The assassin, Leon's eyes never left Wang Yu for even a second. After the lone traveler handed in the mission, Leon stared at Wang Yu and said, I can feel the aura of darkness on you. Can you tell me why? An NPC taking the initiative to talk to a player definitely meant that there was a quest. Hearing Leon's words, Wang Yu took out the Heart of Darkness and said, "This." Wang Yu had only said 2 words when he suddenly flipped his hand and grabbed the Heart of Darkness. At the same time, he stretched his right leg forward and waved his hand in the air. An assassin was slapped out of the air. That assassin's original goal was to snatch the Heart of Darkness from Wang Yu's hands. In the end, he was pushed by Wang Yu again. Wang Yu even used a wrench under her feet. The assassin cried out and fell to the ground. "Why is it you again?" When the Lone Ranger heard the assassin's voice, he immediately recognized the assassin. It was the girl who snatched the Heart of Darkness on the mountaintop, Yi Yeshu. Although Yi Yeshu had covered her face, the girl's body was flatter than a man's. It was hard not to recognize her. When Assassin Leon saw Wang Yu take out the Heart of Darkness, his eyes lit up. Then they dimmed. At this time, Wang Yu and Yi Yeshu exchanged blows again. Yi Yeshu supported himself with one arm and did a forward quick recover. Then, his left hand grabbed the crane's beak and flicked it upwards. The dagger in his right hand rested on his left arm, and he kicked at Wang Yu with both legs. This was the same move Wang Yu had used on Yeshu on the mountain, the left crane overhead hand. Wang Yu unhurriedly extended his right hand and gently placed it on Yi Yeshu's crane beak. Yi Yeshu's dagger in his right hand suddenly stabbed towards Wang Yu's throat. Wang Yu's left tiger claw was already ready for action. When he saw the dagger coming, he grabbed Yi Yeshu's wrist and threw Yi Yeshu to the ground. Fortunately, Wang Yu hadn't used any skills. Moreover, the attack power of his throwing skill wasn't high. Otherwise, Page Book would have died at Wang Yu's hand again. The lone wanderer stared at the 2 players, dumbfounded. He didn't know what to say anymore. Although the lone wanderer was a layman and couldn't understand what Yi Yeshu and Wang Yu were doing, it wasn't hard to tell that Yi Yeshu's mechanics and techniques were amazing. Take the move he had used on Wang Yu as an example. Yi Yeshu's first move was quick and nimble, and his dagger was cunning and ruthless. Any other player wouldn't have been able to dodge the attack. However, not only had Wang Yu dodged the attack, but he had also thrown his opponent to the ground with a backhand. This kind of technique was simply unheard of. Yi Yeshu, who had been thrown to the ground, refused to give up. Just as he was about to swing his dagger at Wang Yu again, the hitman assassin flashed behind Yi Yeshu and struck the back of his head with gouge. A stun symbol appeared above Yi Yeshu's head. "Don't fight pointlessly in front of me." Yi Yeshu coldly glared at Yi Yeshu. He jabbed his dagger into Yi Yeshu, and Yi Yeshu was sealed. "Umph." Yi Yeshu coldly snorted and said to Wang Yu, "Do you dare to find a place to fight me again?" Wang Yu smiled bitterly. "You won't be able to fight me even if you fight me 10 more times. Maybe your grandfather will come." Yi Yeshu was furious. You're too rude." Those who practiced martial arts valued seniority the most. Wang Yu had elevated himself to Yi Yeshu's grandfather. If Yi Yeshu hadn't been sealed, he would have fought Wang Yu to the death. Wang Yu chuckled, but didn't explain. After all, there was too much of a difference between them. If word got out, he would be laughed at for bullying a junior. Assassin Leon ignored the 2 of them. He coldly stared at Wang Yu and asked in a deep voice, "Was that the Heart of Darkness just now?" "Yes, it was the Heart of Darkness. I heard you have an item to seal it. Can you lend it to me?" Wang Yu replied. Assassin Leon gave Wang Yu a meaningful look. He coldly asked, "It's a powerful force. Since you've already unsealed it, why seal it again?" System notification. Quest change to the 3rd round of the altar at the top of the mountain. Power's choice. Choose power. Absorb the power of the Heart of Darkness with Assassin Leon's help to obtain the Apostle class, Slaughterblade. Choose justice. Ask Assassin Leon for the whereabouts of the Setting Sun's roulette and seal the Heart of Darkness. After completing this quest, you will receive an additional 1,000 Light Faction honor points. Power or Justice. Another choice quest. Wang Yu had made this kind of unlucky choice before. At the same time, Wang Yu knew that the bigger the reward, the bigger the trap. The Apostle class was one of the Dark Faction's hidden classes. Just like the Light Faction's hero class, they were both unique. This kind of temptation was unprecedented, but Wang Yu was very calm. First of all, Wang Yu was in the neutral faction. If he chose the apostle class, he would definitely fall into the dark faction. Hermit didn't have any objections to the neutral faction, but he had a lot of objections to the dark faction. It was very likely that the moment Wang Yu accepted the quest, the old man would chase after Wang Yu throughout the server. Hanging on to a god-tier NPC enemy when he was only level 30 wasn't a very smart move. Secondly, the Slaughterblade's corresponding class was Thief. Wang Yu's real identity was a martial artist, so he was naturally more interested in the Grandmaster of Combat's hidden class. As for Thief, this kind of class with the word Thief in it, Wang Yu wouldn't even consider it. Without a doubt, this hidden class that was incomparably tempting to others didn't exist in Wang Yu's eyes at all. So, Wang Yu chose justice without hesitation. Compared to great power, I'm more willing to believe in my own path of justice. Wang Yu expressionlessly recited the system's idiom. Chapter 440. Lost it? Then what do we do? Wang Yu asked the hitman. Wang Yu wasn't worried that he wouldn't be able to complete the quest. After all, this was the system's arrangement. Since the Setting Sun's roulette was lost, the hitman had to have some other way. The hitman gave Wang Yu a meaningful look and said, "Young man, don't think that others will do anything for you for free. Don't forget, I was the one who gave you this hard darkness." Wang Yu was stunned when he heard the hitman's words. Strictly speaking, the hitman wasn't a good person. He had even tried to absorb the heart of darkness's power. How could he completely trust the hitman's words? Seeing Wang Yu's expression, the hitman continued, "When I was young, I was also obsessed with power. The years of wandering have made me grow a lot. I'm old now, and I don't want to live in fear anymore. Do you understand what I mean?" Wang Yu nodded and said, "As long as you tell me the method to seal the heart of darkness, I should be able to make up for my mistakes." The hitman smiled and said, "Of course. But how am I going to live the rest of my life? Can't you see that I can't even pick up a knife?" The hitman glanced at the sealing dagger that the lone wanderer had tossed to the ground. Wang Yu's face darkened. "Good, this is blatantly asking for money. What do you mean you can't pick up a knife?" Yi Yeshu was clearly quite nimble when he was dealing with him. "How much?" Wang Yu asked. 500. The hitman raised his hand and gestured. F***CK. Wang Yu took out his wallet and tossed it over. This system really was a leech. In the blink of an eye, it had completely exploited him. Beside him, Yi Yeshu and the lone wanderer were dumbfounded. They asked, dumbfounded, "Are you really doing a quest? Huh? Don't you know that these NPCs are shameless?" Wang Yu was also slightly surprised. These two fellows were already at this level, especially Page Book, who was already level 30. Did they not know that NPCs could be bribed with money? The solitary Jianghu traveler said, "Isn't it because I don't have enough favorable impression points?" "Yes, if you give them money, they'll have a good impression of you." Wang Yu said truthfully. F***CK. The lone wanderer was dumbfounded. These NPCs were too practical. To think that he had run around like a dog to earn favorability for a few quests in the past. It turned out that the way to increase favorability was actually so simple. The assassin smiled as he put away the bag of coins. He pointed at the sealing dagger on the ground and said, "There is a burial ground at the foot of Sunset Peak. There's a white bone altar there. Place the heart of darkness on the altar's altar and stab the dagger into it." So simple? Wang Yu was in disbelief. An S-rank mission actually had such a process. It was too sloppy. Also, the name of the mission was clearly Altar on the Mountaintop, so why was the altar at the bottom of the valley? The assassin said calmly, "This mission's difficulty has increased because of me." Oh, Wang Yu was skeptical. He walked up and picked up the sealing dagger on the ground. At this moment, the assassin suddenly pointed at the solitary Jianghu traveler and said, "The dagger must be stabbed in by him." After the assassin said this, the solitary Jianghu traveler also received the same mission as Wang Yu. Me? The solitary Jianghu traveler looked at this mission with such a ridiculous penalty. What does it have to do with me? You pulled out the dagger? What about me? Yi Yeshu's expression was ugly. It seemed that this girl had also received a mission. You open the altar. Altar. Wang Yu and the solitary Jianghu traveler looked at Yi Yeshu strangely. Oomph. Yi Yeshu snorted coldly. When I got there first, there was an altar there. I was the one who opened it. Before I could pull out the dagger, you guys came up. No wonder there were only 2 monsters on a mountaintop, and I didn't see the altar in the mission. So you got there first. When Wang Yu first climbed up the cliff, he was confused as to why there were only 2 monsters in such a large space. It turned out that this girl had arrived earlier than the 2 of them. The 2 mountain demons must have respawned later. At this moment, Wang Yu finally realized what was going on. The system was really set up to be responsible for every wrong done. Whoever did wrong had to pay for it. The assassin urged, "All right, you guys go quickly. The power of the Heart of Darkness is spreading. The longer you delay, the more troublesome it will be." "Oh, okay, got it." Wang Yu and the others quickly ran in the direction of Sunset Peak. The solitary Jianghu traveler was quite excited. He didn't expect the last part of the mission to be so easy. Although the penalty for failure was scary, how could they fail such a simple mission? It was an S-rank mission, after all. The reward must be very tempting. At the very least, it would be better than the reward for the hidden profession. Yi Yeshu couldn't hide the excitement in her eyes. This girl was a normal player, and naturally, she couldn't resist the temptation of an S-rank mission. Although the last part of the mission was easy, Wang Yu had the Heart of Darkness in his hands. Without him, they had to put aside the grudge of being thrown off the mountain by Wang Yu. Only Wang Yu was thinking about the assassin's words over and over again. His expression became more and more serious. The boneyard was the map that Wang Yu had found when he jumped off the cliff. It was in the Sunset Mountains. The Sunset Mountains and the Sunset Wilderness were on the opposite side of Sunset City. The distance was very far, and the 3 of them weren't slow. They still ran for nearly 30 minutes. When they returned to the boneyard, Wang Yu felt that the atmosphere was even more strange. The skeletons on the ground felt as if they could come back to life at any time. The map of the boneyard was long and narrow, according to the cliff. The 3 of them followed the map all the way to the end, but the skeletons didn't move. This made Wang Yu even more suspicious. Wang Yu had done an S-rank mission more than once, but it had never gone so smoothly. Wang Yu didn't think that the system would make this S-rank mission so easy. After all, in the first part of the mission, Wang Yu had been chased by monsters and had nowhere to run. How could there be no monsters here? I found the altar. You over there quickly put the Heart of Darkness on it. As Wang Yu thought about it, he suddenly heard Yi Yeshu's voice. Looking in the direction of the voice, Wang Yu saw the so-called altar under Yi Yeshu's feet. The altar wasn't big. It was only 2 meters square. It was a circular platform made of white bones. On top of the platform, there was a white bone platform the size of a bowl. It seemed to be the sacrificial platform. No rush. Wang Yu looked at the altar, waved his hand, and said, "Don't you think this altar is strange? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."